Welcome everyone. Call the special meeting of July 1st, 2019 order.
Yeah, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Bosco? Here. Councilor Sakala? Councilor Crisati?
Here.
Councilor Davis? Councilor Denny?
Here.
Councilor Keiner? Mayor Ludwig?
Here.
Councilor Muller?
Here.
Councilor Sferrazza? Here. Deputy Mayor Suzak? Here. Councilor Ungary? Here. We have 8 members present, 3 are absent.
We welcome everyone to the Enfield Town Council. First of all, thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to have everyone here. And this, I think, we're all very excited to hear your presentation. We certainly have great honor working with our partners, both regionally and nationally. I think we take great pride in this town, working together for the benefit of our citizens, not only in Enfield, but the state of Connecticut. So again, thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy schedules, because I know you're all very busy, to coming here to Enfield. I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, gentlemen. We very much appreciate, as the mayor said, you taking time out of your busy schedules to be here with us this evening. We've been looking forward to it. It's a special meeting 6 to 7, so sometimes we have a sparser attendance in the audience, but we have a lot of people who watch from home. It's live on YouTube. We film it, and then several times a day for the next several months, it'll be out there in the world for people to see. We thank, and I'm going to give a special shout out to the JI reporter, Jessica Lerner. We sent her a press release on Friday, and sometimes they do a blurb, and Jessica took time to do research and do a very nice article because I think she too understood the magnitude of having an all-star cast like this here this evening from state, local, and federal law enforcement to share their perspectives and their view with us. And as I said, this is about my 30th year with the town. And I'm proud to say that I don't think there's ever been a better cooperation on all levels, from the law enforcement communities to the prosecutors that we have in this state. It's unprecedented. And I think people in our town and across the state need to hear that. I think sometimes people are disappointed. They think that in the country that there's a lot of disunity and people can't work together. Nothing could be farther from the truth when it comes to the law enforcement community, as evidenced by your attending here this evening. So I will introduce all of you, and I know you're going to give a brief background and some of the collaborative efforts you've worked on together in Enfield and across the state, and also resources that you can bring to bear to us. And then we'll open it up to questions from the council. So we have Captain Steve Kozlowskis of the Enfield Police Department, Chief Alric Fox, Chief of the Enfield Police Department, Christopher Parakilis, who is the Supervisory Assistant State's Attorney for Connecticut, who heads the office in Enfield that oversees our local prosecutions. We have Leonard Boyle, who is the first Assistant United States Attorney with the U.S. Attorney's Office and a former Commissioner of Public Safety for the state of Connecticut, among other duties he's had, and he'll elaborate on. We have Brian Turner, who is the Special Agent in charge out of New Haven of the Connecticut FBI. And we have Ari, Maria? Papadakos, a countryman
your name, so.
who has joined the Connecticut FBI office most recently. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to perhaps start with Ari down there, or in any order you'd like, and we can just introduce yourselves, and we'll just, sure.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ari Papadakis. I'm the Assistant Special Agent in charge of FBI New Haven, responsible for the criminal branch in the FBI office. I'm recently joining the FBI here. I was away for about 5 years serving overseas in our legal attaché office, so I've been here a week. Been recently getting briefed on some of the great work that we're doing together with some of the local and state entities, police departments here in the state. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'll pass it over to Mr. Turner.
Good evening, ladies.
It is? Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Turner again. I'm the Special Agent in charge of the New Haven Division of FBI. And on behalf of the men and women of the division, it's an honor to be here before the leadership of Enfield. I've been here roughly about 10 months. And during those 10 months, I've had the opportunity to meet and even dine with some of my colleagues in the law enforcement community. And because of that, it's kind of led us to tonight's event. So I'm certain I can have more comments later on. But again, I just want to thank you for being here, and it's an honor to be before you.
Thank you. As Mr. Bromson said, my name is Len Boyle. I've been involved in criminal justice and law enforcement in the state of Connecticut since 1975, when I began as a police officer in the town of East Hartford. I spent many years in the United States Attorney's Office as a line prosecutor, a few years at the state police, as Mr. Bromson said, and for the past 9 years before returning to the United States Attorney's Office, I had the privilege of serving as the Deputy Chief State's Attorney for the state of Connecticut, where my co-deputy was Enfield's native son, John Rosado, a good friend and also a wonderful public servant. I just did want to pass along to you John Durham's best regards. Mr. Durham, as you know from reading the papers, is a very busy man these days and is often called outside the state of Connecticut for various responsibilities. But he wanted to pass along his thanks for this invitation and his best regards to you. And with that, I'll give it to my friend, Mr. Parakilis.
Good evening. I am Chris Parakilis, and I'm privileged to be here with all of you tonight and to sit with my colleagues here. It was nice to reunite with friends that I've known for quite some time, and nice to meet, for the first time, a fellow Greek countryman, Ari. We've got a lot of Greeks in the room tonight, don't we, Maria? That's good. In any event, I'm privileged to serve as the supervisor of the Enfield Courthouse here. We serve 7 towns in north central Connecticut, including Enfield, which is our biggest contributor. And I look forward to continuing good work with Chief Fox, who we speak to almost daily, and his administration in terms of keeping you folks safe in the community here. And it is indeed a privilege to work with our federal counterparts, as we often do, and you'll see here tonight. It's a partnership moving forward with great pace, and I think at the end of the night you'll get a better understanding of how the federal and state branches work together with local law enforcement to do the job that needs to be done. So it's great to be here, and I hope you enjoy it.
Make sure it stays cool.
Good evening, Mr. Bromson, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. We have certainly had the pleasure of working together directly over the last year and a quarter, so I will spare you the resume rundown. But I did reflect on the way over here today that during my oral interview panel, one of the questions that was asked of me was about collaboration and cooperation between state, local, federal law enforcement agencies and how we leverage those resources together in order to produce the best outcome for the town of Enfield or any community as it might be relevant. And I provided an answer to the question that I thought was fluid, that I thought was seamless, that I thought was appropriate. But today is that question in action. It really is a pleasure to be able to present these individuals to you, and knowing what I know of them, and I would expect nothing other than the degree of humility that you've just heard. Their resumes and their CVs and the places they've been and the things that they've done are just outstanding. And to have them as our partners within this town for the traditional areas of federal law enforcement, matters prosecuted at the state level that we would think of, kidnapping, drug activities, bank robbery, but also the things that are certainly much more 2019 cutting edge in nature. We have had these organizations in this town previously, and I'd love to think that we're never going to need them again, but we certainly know that we are, whether it be an Eli Lilly situation, whether it be a bank robbery, whether it be a terrorism type issue. We certainly hope to never have any of those concerns, but it's important to us to have that working relationship, and it's also very important to us, to me personally, to Mr. Bromson, I'm sure, that you know that we have that working relationship. And that's our goal tonight. Perhaps when we're done with the round robin, we can get into a little bit more detail about how that relationship works and the types of cases where you might see interplay or have seen interplay between these agencies. But we thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you tonight and to share that information. I think after the captain, maybe we'll go back to Mr. Turner if that's appropriate.
Thanks, Chief. Mr. Bromson. Mr. Mayor, I am Steve Keselowskis. I am the newly appointed captain of the Enfield Police Department. Been here for about a month now, and it is an honor and a privilege to serve in this capacity. I've been with the department since I was 13 years old. I started out as an explorer. I'm in my 26th year, and I love my job more now than I ever have. So I am just here to support the mission of our department, Chief Fox with the running of the department, and I'm very excited about my new position.
And what I'm going to do to preface with Brian's going to kick off, two areas of concern here and across the country are basically the opioid epidemic, what's being done about it, and also school security. And we've had the great fortune, the FBI of Connecticut came to the Enfield Together Coalition earlier this year, and some of the council people were there for it. Chasing the Dragon is the name of the seminar. Hopefully we're going to try to do that in the schools, and that was provided by their agent and their outreach person just about the ills and the plague of opioids. And that sort of was from a prevention point of view, letting people know the dangers of it. These gentlemen are going to talk about now about what I think in some degree what happens when you run afoul of it. It's going to be more of the prosecution and what they do after that. Prevention has not succeeded in some cases. And then secondly, we're going to talk about, because I think we're going to try to be doing our next phase of our collaborative effort with our federal partners about school security, and they offer some of those things. The chief has been working with overtime to prepare for active shooter, giving training to all of our officers. But these are things we have in common. And as I said in the article this evening, this isn't your grandfather's FBI or U.S. attorneys. It isn't just a bank robbery or a kidnapping that will trigger them coming into the community to help us. And when we met when Brian was new and took the time to come up here to Enfield from New Haven, he's been here, this is his third or fourth visit, and he shared with us the different resources, and we talked to Chris Perikilis, and he came. It's amazing what they are doing and what they are offering to us on a cascade of different issues across the board. But I feel we can start off with those, and there are others in cybersecurity. I'm anxious to hear from our U.S. Attorney representative, because there's been prosecutions now. They've kicked it up from state prosecutions for the sale of opioids and a lot of death cases. The chief has shared those articles and the press releases from the U.S. Attorney's Office that we've shared with you all. So I think it's just a wonderful group here to talk about those efforts and those successes, when sometimes people just see the negative and think it's a battle we're losing. I think quite the contrary. With men of this caliber, it's a battle that we can win, and that they're fighting hard to win on our behalf. Brian?
Yeah, if I may, to kind of set the backdrop on why we're here tonight, of creating a culture of cooperation. I think that's really what brings us here tonight. But let's recognize a couple of things, not only within the confines of the town of Enfield here, but throughout the United States and for the world, for that matter. The world has shrunk, to be honest with you. And that's on a number of fronts in terms of not only travel, everyone is using aircraft a lot more frequently. Our economy is international more in nature than it was 30, 40 years ago. And lastly, communication. As a result, and at the same time, we have local communities that are becoming even more diverse. For those of you all who probably grew up in the town of Enfield, think about what this place was like 25 years ago and look at today. That is indicative of many communities throughout the United States. Another thing that we have to contend with is the fact that the public opinion is greatly influenced by technology. We have these little computers called smartphones. We have iPads. And with that, the media, whether it's social media or traditional media, is a lot more accelerated. The velocity's faster, there's more commentary, and there's more competition. So recognizing kind of all these conditions in which we as law enforcement have to operate in, the need, the world in which we operate is a lot more asymmetric. And because of that, the lack of boundaries that we may have, we see a greater need for collaboration from the local, state, and federal level to basically combine our resources. So I just wanted to open that up as a kind of opening comments as a theme on why we're here today. I want to turn over to Lynn, see if he wanted to have any thoughts with that.
I've had the pleasure, and I use that word loosely in certain occasions, of working in other parts of the country. And I can assure you that the situation that exists in Connecticut among state, municipal, and federal law enforcement officials is unfortunately unique. Unfortunate because other jurisdictions just don't have the sort of cooperation that we have. If you watch a typical cops and robbers show on television, you'll sometimes see the local police officer griping about, oh, here come the suits, here come the feds. And it's a standard trope, I think, in a lot of those television shows. That just doesn't exist in the state of Connecticut. Certainly there are certain crimes that Chief Fox and his men and women have to investigate where there is just no federal jurisdiction whatsoever. Someone gets in an argument in a bar with somebody else and someone punches someone, that's an assault case. There's no federal jurisdiction there. But federal jurisdiction has expanded drastically over the past several decades, and because of that, the United States Attorney's Office and the federal law enforcement agencies now have much greater ability to get involved in matters that traditionally had been viewed as more of a municipal or state crime. And really in Connecticut, because of the relationships that we have, it all comes down to where can we best investigate this particular threat to the community and where can we get the most bang for our buck. And it doesn't take anything more than Chris picking up the phone and calling me or calling one of our prosecutors in Hartford and saying, Chief Fox and his folks have been looking at this organization. We think they've been involved in some significant drug trafficking. We just can't seem to get to first base. We could really use the help of federal law enforcement, the FBI, the DEA, perhaps the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and we could really use the benefit of a federal grand jury to help us with this investigation. And that's all it takes. That one phone call from Chris or from the chief, and we'll sit down, we'll get together, figure out what the scope of the investigation should be. I don't even have to call the special agent in charge of the FBI for something like that. I could. He'd answer the phone and he'd say, absolutely, whatever you need. But for something like that, I can simply call a supervisor in the FBI and they will respond immediately. So I don't want to take too much time, but I mentioned the federal grand jury, and I think that's something that perhaps folks on the outside don't quite understand the power and benefit of the federal grand jury. And if we want to talk about that as we go on tonight, I can explain how it might occur to Chris on certain occasions, gee, I really should call Len about this because that federal grand jury would be of great help. And again, all it would take is a telephone call. So if you want to talk about that, we certainly can. But I do want to emphasize that what you see and sometimes what you read as fact in other jurisdictions just doesn't exist in Connecticut. Simple telephone calls, and we get investigations up and running. Chris?
There's so many working parts to public safety, from the individuals doing their job, to the agencies that they work for, to the agencies working together. I've been a prosecutor for 25 years now, and I immediately realized that in working with my local police departments, there has to be that relationship. It's vital to sustaining our mission. You can't be provincial, you can't be territorial. You have to work together every single day. And the work that all of the parts put in, all of these individuals on an individual level and an agency level, is unbelievable. As I said earlier, it may be that an arrest is made by a local police department agency and the case comes to court, but it's not as if the baton gets passed to the prosecutor and there's no relationship that continues in moving forward. We're constantly dealing with each other, working on search warrants, all kinds of the background things that lead to arrests, and it only happens when these individuals communicate with each other, talk to each other, and have a working relationship together. Now, I learned very quickly that the orbit is much greater than that now that we have our friends on the federal level, and they operate under the same provisos. Brian is an agent, so is Ari an agent, but they work together hand in hand, day to day with their federal prosecutors. It has to work that way. You need that vital relationship. And now with the kinds of crimes that are in vogue, if you will, the opioid crisis, or another popular one, unfortunately, these days is child sex trafficking. We are sharing our resources at the federal and state level as if as never before. Since I've had the pleasure of meeting Brian, we've talked on several occasions to spitball certain things, and I call and say, look, we could really use a boost in terms of these forensics. Can you give us a hand there, or can you put some resources on the issue? It's happening every day. The amount of work that these agencies are doing to keep people safe is amazing. And as Len said, there's interaction between the state prosecution and the federal prosecution. Sometimes I do reach out to the federal side and indicate that a certain arrest is made that may have an interest to the federal authorities. Often it is that the federal authorities or the federal prosecutor will call me and say, I know you have this arrest, but can we work together, and what do you think about us seeking an indictment and taking over the prosecution federally? It's a utilitarian mindset that we have, because sometimes at the federal level with certain federal charges, the sentencing of an individual for various offenses could be much more appropriate than handle at the federal level and at the state level. Often federal sentencing guidelines would provide for an individual to serve minimum mandatory jail time for the most serious of offenders. Maybe the state statutes don't have that minimum mandatory sentencing scenario. So we work together to figure out who can best handle the case, number one, and number two, what the best outcome could possibly be. So it continues to be a privilege to work with these gentlemen here tonight, and it's very important for you to know how much goes into public safety and how hard these agencies are working together to keep you safe.
So just one quick example to further this, and then perhaps if Mr. Bromson, Mr. Ludwig think it appropriate, we'll defer it to the council for questions. Going back to my former life, Sandy Hook, God forbid there ever be a Sandy Hook anywhere. God forbid there ever be a Sandy Hook in Enfield. But having been albeit not a first responder, just geography did not permit that, but having been at that scene, we broke a substantial piece of that case off, and the FBI just ran with it for us. They did the computers, they did the forensics, and they obviously had a much more in-place infrastructure to make contact with some out-of-town relatives that we needed to track down on that day. And they were able to do that in a much more expeditious fashion than we could have at the state level. So just an example to perhaps go from the general to the specific. With an awareness of the time, the value of the time on the part of the council, as well as our tendency to speak in general abstract, Mr. Mayor, if you think it's appropriate, would you like to defer or open up to the council for questions or comments, or what would work best for you?
And I'd like to just say before we do that, thank you, Chief. I'd like you gentlemen to know, and I know there are many ladies of the law enforcement community that are working hard on our behalf too. Me being flanked by two wonderful assistants that are ladies, I didn't want to. Earlier in remarks, I said the gentlemen of law enforcement. I know there are many ladies of law enforcement too, but I want you to know that having been here and served in Maria's capacity and now in my present one for 30 years, there is no council or town that is more supportive of law enforcement in Connecticut. Our citizens and the council people they elect have done more to support law enforcement at every turn with every request on resources and training, whether they come forward and want canine units or to join a local CREST team or overtime for certain situations or to be involved in the state-of-the-art equipment, as I said, assault weapons and money to train in that, coming up with the state-of-the-art weapons and they need to be turned in. Any request the chief reasonably makes, this council and those before have honored it, and it's because the citizens of Enfield very much support law enforcement, and I think as well, as Leonard said, it's unique in Connecticut in regard to perhaps how law enforcement gets along, but I think Enfield's a shining example of how much our citizens support law enforcement to give you all the tools to do your job too. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if we want to go around and ask questions, and they can circle back.
First of all, thank you. We'll be gentle.
They're all armed, so you should be gentle, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Sferrazza.
Welcome, gentlemen. I can't tell you how proud and happy I am that you took the time to be here tonight. Mr. Turner, I've never met you before, but I had the privilege of working with your predecessors, Patricia Farrick, and worked very closely with Kim Mertz when she was here. I was a police officer up until last year, spent 38 years with the department, 12 as chief. And what I remember the most is when we had very serious crimes that we needed your help. And the one that stands out is we had a missing 8-year-old little boy. And we knew from the get-go this was going to go bad. This wasn't your typical, he's lost. We made a call to the New Haven office, to Kim Mertz. Within an hour, I had 2 FBI agents in the police department. By 8 o'clock that night, you brought in your virtual command center and your child abduction team. I must have had 15 agents in the police department working side by side with my officers trying to track down this little boy. Your agency never abandoned us. You stayed with us for the 7 days, and ultimately the little boy was found dead. But it wasn't for lack of effort. And I can't tell you how much I appreciated the fact that you guys were able to come in and help us with that. I can go on with other cases we've had, hazmat cases at the schools. So one of the things is because I'm recently retired, in my role as a police chief, I didn't think it was appropriate for me to give political opinions on certain laws and things. I considered myself part of the executive branch. We enforce law, legislators make law. But I'm not a policeman now. I'm a politician, I guess. And I have an opinion on something. And I want you to know that the backdrop in the state of Connecticut right now, what the governor is about to sign, a bill that's going to prohibit local law enforcement from cooperating with federal law enforcement, specifically ICE. I'm not here to expound upon migrants and all that type of thing. All I'm here to say is that, you know, when we need the FBI to enforce sex trafficking, you guys are there. When I needed Secret Service for counterfeit or whatever, they're there. DEA is there. And now to ask the local police to turn their back on another federal law enforcement agency is an abomination, in my opinion. And I want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, and to the extent the chief is able to work within the framework of the state law, Enfield has always cooperated with our federal, our state police, and local police. And the way that we're most effective is when we collaborate together. And I'm just grateful I'm not in Chief Fox's shoes today and be in a position to have to turn my back when a federal law enforcement officer calls and says, we think the guy you got locked up is a MS-13 gang member, and we got to say, sorry, can't help you. I think it makes the people less safe in town, and it's just incredible that something like that could happen in our state. But beyond that, what you said, Mr. Turner, I could vouch for it firsthand. The cooperation, it's not like the FBI was here and we were here. We were partners. We worked together. It didn't matter who the SAC was. And I'll never forget what the office did for us in that investigation with the little boy. I know what it meant to the family. And just to see that number of not only agents, but the resources your department had. We needed a piece of equipment to scan the river. And Kim said, well, just fly it in from Quantico. I said, that's good, because our plane is in for service. So, but it was just wonderful to have that. And you know,
Invested in tanks.
so at a time when the media and people are turning against federal law enforcement, you know, I just say this, that if nothing else, we're a nation of laws. And there's a law in this country, it's been there a long time, that says you just can't walk in whenever you want. And Congress created ICE. Those are federal law enforcement officials. They're tasked with enforcing that. So if people don't want that enforced, change the law. Make the law say, just come on in. But as long as it's a law to ask law enforcement, put people like Mr. Keselowski and Chief Fox, where they take an oath to uphold the Constitution in the states, and yet we're not going to work with you guys, it's just incredible to me. That isn't how I feel about it. I know that isn't how the chief feels about it. And this is one of the few times I'm glad I'm not the chief and I'm just a politician, because if I was chief and I said this, I'd be unemployed. But thank you again, and I appreciate everything you and your agencies do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I want to elaborate, gentlemen, because during that time period that he's talking about, I was public safety director and I had the opportunity to work with the chief and the FBI, and it was really amazing, and that's why we love to have your resources come to bear. At that time, the search centered around the Connecticut River. There were DEP, state police, and fire department dive teams, and it was in April, so the river was high and it was rapid, and the special agent in charge, for the first time in history, they called up to the dams up to Vermont, and they lowered the level of the Connecticut River, and we were able to find the young man. So we like friends like that.
Well, sir, I appreciate you sharing that with us, because that history that you've kind of established from my predecessors, I can assure you that we'll continue to maintain that. Our mission is like consistent with any other law enforcement mission. Very simple, but very appropriate here. Protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. That mission will withstand for some time coming. So with that being said, the partnership that Chief Fox and I have, like in the past, if there is a need, not even under a crisis scenario, but even more of a routine one, all I need is a phone call or email from him, and that's already been tested by other chiefs in the state. So I just can assure you that we'll continue that practice as you experience. Thanks, sir.
Councilor Ungary, then Councilor Denny.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your time. I have one question about school security. 4 years ago, in the state of Connecticut, we have 169 towns in the state, and out of that, there were 2 that had school security in all the schools, including elementary and the Catholic schools. There was only 2, and I believe it was North Brantford and Enfield. And so I'm wondering, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I was wondering if those numbers have changed.
You're talking about school
I don't know if
security
you-
officers.
School security officers.
Chief Fox, sorry.
So I think the numbers have changed, but I think it probably looks different than what it looked like the number of years ago that you described. Enfield really was, along with North Brantford, a cutting-edge community. I believe the statute that was created was in large part created because of the driving force of Enfield saying, this is what we think we should do to keep the children in our community safe. What we have now, I would offer, is perhaps more of a hodgepodge within the different communities, where we see variations of school security, unarmed guards, armed guards in some cases, school resource officers in other cases, and any combination of any of those that you can imagine. So I think it does look much different than what it is that you described. I think it's probably much more robust than it was at that time, because you were you were a groundbreaker at that point. Certainly enhanced school safety and school security is prevalent throughout the state in these various forms at this point.
Thank you, sir. All set? Councilor Denny.
Yeah, Mr. Boyle, you said you would elaborate on the cooperation with the federal courts.
Yes, sir.
Could you?
Grand jury?
Could you?
Sure.
Thank you.
One of the difficulties in investigating crimes that the state's attorneys face is that there is effectively no sitting state grand jury process. Almost every state has some sort of investigatory grand jury. The Connecticut process to enable the creation of a grand jury is one that's quite cumbersome. If Chris wanted to investigate a group that Chief Fox and his detectives believed were involved in a number of armed robberies, let's say, and it was believed that a grand jury would be necessary to do that investigation, Chris would have to go through a lengthy process of putting together an affidavit explaining how it is that all other means of traditional investigative avenues had been exhausted, and that only the existence of a grand jury could help to solve the crime. On the federal side, we have sitting grand juries all the time. And the benefit of the grand jury is simply this. The grand jury can issue subpoenas and compel people to come and testify. So very often, as we know in today's culture, there are people who have information about crimes, but they're not going to come forward. They're not going to talk to the police. And if one of Chief Fox's detectives shows up and knocks on their door and that person says, sorry, I'm not going to talk to you, there's nothing the police officer can do. With the existence of a federal grand jury, those officers working with an FBI agent or an ATF or DEA agent can hand that person a grand jury subpoena, and now that person has no choice. He has to come and testify in front of the grand jury and give whatever evidence he has in that particular crime. The other thing that the grand jury can do is issue subpoenas, so that, for instance, in financial crime cases, where if Chris wants to investigate some of the banking activity of perhaps a suspect who's involved in those crimes, he can't get to first base because he can't get a search warrant to get that information. A federal grand jury can simply issue subpoenas, and we can get that banking information and begin the investigation in that way. So the federal grand jury is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's one that we have used more and more frequently over the past several years in conjunction with our state and municipal partners to investigate crimes that, as Mr. Bromson said, 30 or 40 years ago probably would have never been looked at as a potential federal crime. We do that now, and we've had an extraordinary amount of success, particularly in investigating and prosecuting throughout the state people who are involved in commercial robberies. people who are robbing. People don't rob banks much anymore because it's not such a wise idea. You get the FBI on you immediately, and it's just not a good thing to do. But there are a lot of robberies of small convenience stores. Those robberies violate federal law because those convenience stores carry goods that travel in interstate commerce. Therefore, there's federal jurisdiction. And we've done a lot of investigations and prosecutions in conjunction with the FBI over the past few years of organized groups who were particularly violent, often used that activity to fuel their drug trade, and have been able to bring a lot of violent people to justice. And that's the kind of tool, kind of investigation that the grand jury is a particularly effective tool in investigating.
And I just want to add, Len, sometimes an example, real life here, and the chief will recall when we had that missing child, we had determined at one of our adjunct libraries, the Pearl Street Library branch, he had been on his computer and he'd been using it. We were afraid that perhaps somebody had, groomed him and lured him away. So we had asked a former employee that we wanted permission to go on and look at the site, not to prosecute the young man, but to try to save his life. He refused. He said, constitutionally, I'm opposed to that. Well, the special agent in charge was livid. He called to Hartford, where I talked, I believe it was Assistant U.S. Attorney Youngblood at the time, and he got on the phone. He said, Mr. Bromson, he said, you tell that individual we have a sitting grand jury, and if he does not give us access to the computer, we'll indict him for obstruction of justice in 15 minutes. Needless to say, there was a change of heart, and we did get to look at the computer. So those are the resources that the federal people, and that's an example of the grand jury and the power of it.
Is that it? Thank you. Councilor Crissati, then Councilor Mueller.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for attending. I'm quite impressed with the lineup of people that we have sitting in front of us today. I'm a member of the North Central Opioid Task Force. I see a lot of presentations that have come across our committee, and I was part of that discussion with Chasing the Dragon with the Enfield Together Coalition, and that's a coalition that that really dedicates their time for making a commitment to the community with making everybody aware of drug activity. All right, and I have to commend. We've had a couple of situations here in town where there's been some deaths, and they track to where the actual drugs have come from. The dealers hitting the dealers. Where is this coming from? And I know that there has been some good work from the federal level, and I know with the chief and everything that people have been brought to justice. I want to thank you for that, because this is a big thing that with our community. The opioid epidemic that we do have here in town, and I think since Chief has been here, we put a dent into a lot of the activity that is going down, and the cooperation, with the federal agencies, and with the U.S. Attorney's Office and Mr. Parakilis's office. You guys have been doing a fantastic job in keeping this community safe, and I just want to say thank you and commend you for that. I just want to. One of the other things that it was a few months back in New Haven when all these people were going down, and I believe a federal agent had told us that the reason why there was a lot of these people were ODing is due to the fact of they were smoking potpourri. All right, and if that was laced with fentanyl or whatever, and I know that you put a big dent into that also. So with everything that you've been doing, just keep up that hard work and everything.
Thank you, sir, for sharing that with us. The one thing I wanted to highlight on what you just raised is, unfortunately, the opioid crisis is one of those threats that we frankly can't arrest or prosecute our way out of. And it really kind of hits at another point that I like to raise before the forum, is the importance of community outreach. So again, in unison with the Enfield PD, the FBI here in New Haven has a community outreach specialist and a community outreach staff that was the face of the prior program that you were part of. And I think that's an ongoing effort that we're going to have to do, to go out there and work with the leadership in the various communities to educate people at all various stages of age groups about the evils of opioids. This is not just some heroin addict that's rolling over. A person can get addicted even just going to the hospital. And so that's one of the things that is just as important as conducting investigations associated with this threat, also working with the community to make them better educated.
Thank you.
Councilor Mueller.
Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. My question's for Mr. Turner. How many agents do we have in Connecticut?
We have roughly about 100 agents. And that's a great question, so thanks for asking that. So the FBI New Haven division is a medium-sized division compared to the other 55 field offices in the United States. So we have one main office here in New Haven, Connecticut, and we have three what we call resident agencies. There's basically sub-offices. One's located in Bridgeport, one in New London, and the other in Meriden. And between all those offices, we have all our FBI staff located in those offices, where we're better postured to work with partners throughout the state to address the various threats that we may uncover. And I'll say I had another talking point, but I'll wait till later, so I just want to ask you.
Question? I actually had two questions. One is, and again, I'm not trying to put you in a spot. We're talking about opioids. We have a case study right in front of us when it comes to a drug that's legal, and again, actually prescribed. And we're talking about then legalizing marijuana. Well, we have a case study sitting right in front of you, gentlemen, in every community that you deal with, and the tax that it has on the human being, to the dimension of New Haven, where the 75 people, I think it was, overdosed on the green down there. And I also heard it was because it was synthetic. Some of that stuff was synthetic, and that's what happens when you legalize. It becomes higher because the government's taxing it. And guess what? The costs go up. So what do? You get a cheaper brand from the street. And unfortunately, it can be synthetic, and it can kill people. I guess it's more, I don't want to put you in a spot, but does law enforcement take a position or willing, or at least, when these kind of bills are being debated at the state level or even at the federal level, when you see the case study right in front of you and you deal with it more than anyone else, when good people who unfortunately may have just gone awry, I know the intentions are good, right? The intentions of opioids are good. It's to help people with pain. It's to help people. Same with now with legal marijuana. It's going to help people with pain. Yeah, but the government's already proven it can't regulate opioids. So how are we going to regulate marijuana? And then, so you might be back here in a year, if we legalize it, telling us as a community, man, we have another crisis going on. And I guess I get frustrated a little bit that I'd like to see law enforcement, without being political, be more out there on those things, whether it be in the schools, whether it be, wherever it may be, letting people know, yeah, it sounds great, and yeah, maybe tax dollars would be great too, but the cost is so much greater than whatever tax dollars we get. And you folks see it more than anybody, obviously, that we see it going on right now. You know what I mean? So I would love to see a little bit more from the enforcement community, like, hey, maybe this isn't as great as idea as everyone wants to make it out to be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I echo those concerns on a personal level. Certainly, as the chief of police, as an individual, I try to stay apolitical on it.
No, I know. I'm not trying to put you in a spot.
I would share with you that to the extent these groups speak to you at all, the Connecticut Chiefs of Police Association, sort of the amalgam group of all the chiefs throughout the state, did take a position very publicly and very vociferously on behalf of the entities, if you will, against legalized marijuana. And be this good or bad, it was shared with us by the CPCA lobbyist recently that he thinks it frankly was the clergy and the CPCA that kept marijuana legalization. Be that good or bad, subject to individual opinions, those are the two groups that this year defeated legalized marijuana.
No, that's, from my opinion, it's good news. And we'd love to have an FBI office in town, by the way. You're welcome. We have some vacant buildings in town. We're certainly trying to market them. We just hired a real estate agent, Mr. Turner. I want to throw an offer on the table, and it's funny. And I try to lighten a little bit, but it's interesting. Any organization in the state or in the world, right? When you have a survey, you ask your employees, how can we do it better? The number one thing, no matter how well they're paid, what their job is, what their responsibilities are, is collaboration. How do we collaborate better? So my question to you is, this is the point of this, is we want to find ways of even working closer together. Because again, the end result, right, the outcome is a safer community, right? That's the outcome everyone's shooting for. So I guess my question to anyone who'd like to answer it, what can the town do to work better with our federal and state partners? Because I personally, again, as Councilman Ferrara said, our number one goal here is when we raise our hand and we get elected is protect our community. So again, for us, we're willing to say, what do you think the town of Enfield could do better?
There are any number of task forces, as you likely are aware, and I'll send the microphone this way to allow the folks at that end of the line to speak in more detail. This group has, although it's on the DEA side, not on the FBI side, but this council did bless, and I think we're very grateful that you have the assignment of an Enfield detective to the DEA task force. That's a real world, real life example of one that's going on right now. I suspect that Mr. Turner would not object to the assignment of additional people to his task forces, but obviously there are always implications on the financial side of the house for Mr. Bromson and for you to consider.
And while we're passing that down, I'll just say when we had worked with the FBI last time, Brian, they were so taken with some of our detectives that they were paired with that they actually tried to recruit them. Luckily, they were younger, had younger families. They didn't want to go. But I think that's a real testament and compliment to our police department as well. But
Yeah, Mayor, that's another great question. And one thing I will offer, again, a large part of what we do is community outreach. So every year, we just finished this past March, we have what is called the Citizens Academy. And what that involves is taking select leaders from the communities in which various FBI offices exist, and we get those individuals and come to an 8-week program in which that individual is able to get an inside kind of peek into the FBI. So it's a very light lift, but I use your question as an offer to maybe anybody here in the leadership in the town of Enfield for next year's class, which will start that canvas in November of this year. And by doing that, we will have somebody that kind of has a better understanding of the things that we do. Frankly, we bleed like anybody else. We are the citizens of the state of Connecticut. We're here with you. We live with you. We're part of this. So, just kind of, there's no boogeyman thing. We're public servants just like everybody else. So.
We have we have actually a forensic class at our high school that is actually very well attended, and it does a very good job. I don't want to speak for the school system. I'm sure we'd love to have some of our good FBI agents come up and talk to them, because I think they would be thrilled by it. And I know it's a great program in the high school. Councilman Sferrara.
I have a question for Chris. Just so everybody watching on television knows and people know, GA13 encompasses 7 communities. You're arrested anywhere in these 7 towns, you go to GA13, correct?
Yes.
So the question is, what percentage of the docket, the criminal docket, is generated from Enfield versus the other 6 towns?
I would have to say Enfield produces, and this may be conservative, between 40 and 50% of the case.
So the other 6 towns split the other 50. Our town alone, our police department alone, is doing half of everything that you see in the court.
That's a fair statement.
Okay. And the other one is, I'm going to ask a question, Mr. Turner and Mr. Boyd. I know the answer, but with all this talk about legalization of marijuana, and I'm not going to go on and on about that, but what we seem to forget is, I don't care if Governor Lamont signs it tomorrow and the House and the Senate passes it, USC code, federal law, is it's illegal, correct?
That's true.
So, hypothetically, if the state were to legalize it, or like Colorado did, and you were given marching orders from the appropriate people, it doesn't matter if it's legal in Connecticut. Federally, they'd go to jail.
Federal authorities are entitled to enforce federal law. There are policies that are being adopted now at the Department of Justice to deal with those situations in states where marijuana possession and use is legalized. But you're right, it is still a violation of federal law and can still be prosecuted under federal law.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Boyle, just while you have the mic, I was going to ask if you could perhaps follow up and tell us what qualifies a case in the sales of opioids, for instance, that was distinguish it from being handled by the state and qualifies it now to be handled by the feds, as a number of Enfield cases have been in the last year.
Narcotics is one of those areas where every narcotics distribution offense is prosecutable both as a state and a federal crime, because narcotics travel in interstate commerce. Therefore, under the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, federal law can apply to any narcotics possession or distribution. Typically, it's a question of a discussion. If there's a question whether it should be state or federal, there's a discussion among state and federal officials and municipal officials as to the size of the organization, the amount of drugs involved, the tools that might be necessary to conduct the investigation. If it's an enterprise and it's believed that a wiretap would be particularly helpful in conducting that investigation, the federal wiretap tools and the use of federal agents to conduct those wiretaps is very beneficial. Very often that case will go federal. But legally, any narcotics distribution case can be prosecuted either federally or by the state.
Councilman Kiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Chief Fox. Chief, I grew up in Bridgeport, where the drinking age in Connecticut was 21 and New York was 18. And I remember as a kid driving on I-95, taking maybe a half an hour to get to Portchester, and about 10 minutes back to Bridgeport again. The same thing holds true now with legalization of marijuana in Massachusetts and without legalization in Connecticut. Are you seeing any problems now with people coming in from Massachusetts either under the influence of drugs or carrying drugs?
Thank you. Anecdotally, I believe that to be the case. I cannot point to a statistically significant uptick that I can attribute to legalization in marijuana. But I think that, by any logical interpretation and extrapolation of what you've said, I think it just has to be the case. I think it has to be true. Particularly as the father of a pair of teenagers, it concerns me as well, this close to the Massachusetts line, and it concerns me as to what message it is that's being sent to our youth. So the short answer is, I believe the answer. I believe you are correct. I'm confident that you're correct. My ability to support that with a firm or adequate sample set is somewhat limited, unfortunately.
Are you taking it? Do you have any potential actions that you will be taking if you notice this intake from Massachusetts?
Well, we have, when legalization occurred, and there were a number of media outlets that reached out as well, because frankly, we're the big town on the interstate that borders Massachusetts. We use for example, our DUI enforcement money. We use it wisely. A Tuesday afternoon for DUI enforcement money, probably not so much. New Year's Eve, major holidays, Super Bowl, St. Patty's Day, days that are traditionally associated with the overconsumption of alcohol, those are days where we would tend to use a little bit more in the category of drunk or drugged driving enforcement. So I think that would be an example of what you're describing. There was perhaps a fear or a concern or an apprehension, be it a good or a bad apprehension, that after Massachusetts legalized that we were somehow going to have checkpoints on the state border, and constitutionally and practically we of course couldn't do that. To the extent that we identify that problem or any problem, we would always direct resources in that direction. If someone purchases marijuana out of state and slides into town on a back road into our community, it would have to be happenstance, unfortunately, that we would interact with that individual and have occasion to know a little bit more about what it was that they did.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I know Brian has another point, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Turner. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted for the full, education of the committee here and everybody in the room to know that the FBI's cooperation just doesn't exist within the domestic United States. We also have an ability to have an international component. So that's why I'm glad to have Ari here, because he just reported in from a 4-year assignment in Athens, Greece. So I was going to give him an opportunity to let you know, if we had a most wanted fugitive out of Enfield, and that person were to get over to Greece, Ari can walk you through that.
So for for the purpose of this conversation today that we're having regarding collaboration and some of the things that we can bring to bear as the FBI, one of the most powerful things that we have is our legal attachés offices overseas. The legal attaché is the head of the FBI office, which is usually located in an embassy around the world. We have 80 plus such offices. As Mr. Turner just said, I just reported in last week from Athens, Greece. I would say during my time in Greece, about 20% to 30% of the workload that we had was assisting local and state authorities in locating some of their subjects. Some of the individuals were the subjects of homicide investigations, rape investigations, and all kinds of fraud schemes. How that works is the legal attaché will go over with his team, generally a couple of assistant legal attachés, an analyst, and field or legal attaché offices can vary in sizes. They will have the relationship with the host nation countries. In my particular case, it was the government of Greece and the government of Cyprus, both incredible partners from the Greek National Police and the Cyprus National Police. So in the case here in Connecticut, let's say, for example, the Enfield PD, if they had an investigation that took them to Greece, they could easily tap into our legal attaché system through the FBI office here. I worked with many detectives and investigators throughout the country trying to facilitate their investigations, guiding them, and trying to, because you're dealing with Greek law, European law, so trying to help them navigate. In a lot of cases, I worked with their district attorneys as well, trying to explain the best ways to potentially get a subject back into U.S. custody. This is one of the best tools that I think we can offer, especially in the international realm. And it is one of the biggest collaborative pieces, I believe, in the FBI. So just another example of how we work and try to fill in to support not only our own investigations, but also local law enforcement, state law enforcement.
Anyone else? Councilman Sferrazza.
Just real quick, Chief Fox, to Mr. Kiner's question about what have we done to prepare potentially for marijuana drivers. In addition to using the drunk driving grant money judiciously, we also have or had at least 1 or 2 officers assigned to detect narcotics. And could you speak to that, please?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the reminder. We have drug enforcement recognition officers, and we are gearing up to train another one up as well. Those are officers much like your ordinary patrol officer would be comfortable and confident with what we refer to as the standardized field sobriety tests. DREs, as we refer to them, are hyper trained to detect narcotics, intoxication by narcotics. Because of the limited number of them that are available, I have to have them at the right place at the right time to make use of them. But while that's unfortunate, that's to be expected because not everyone's going to be an expert in everything all the time. It's a resource allocation issue. But Chief, thank you. I do appreciate that reminder. That's an important point.
Councilor Ungary?
Just a quick question. I'm thinking of Enfield in particular. Just to our north a few miles, we have gaming with MGM. And then to our south, there's a proposed gaming site in East Windsor. Thinking of all the different concerns that can arise because of that. Is that something that's just strictly local police, or are there any measures in place of collaboration with state and federal working together?
Ma'am, that's situational dependent. It would depend on what, if first of all, we have to, determine if there was any type of, criminal act that had been committed. But that being said, we at the federal level, we do within the state of Connecticut maintain relationships not only with our law enforcement partners, but also partnerships with private and academic entities as well. And for the sake of just simply having an understanding of what's going on in our territory, hopefully there's nothing there, but in the event that something is there, there's potentially a tripwire there in case any type of criminal activity is detected.
Anything else? Closing statements, gentlemen? Anyone?
I'm just going to use this opportunity again to thank you, but one of the things that we didn't have time to talk about is the vector of cyber. We kind of brushed on it a little bit. It transcends a number of criminal threats. Not only national security, but also financial. And then for the people here within the room and even in the state of Connecticut, a lot of older Americans are being targeted, with various scams, not just for the phone, but even through cyber. So I took the liberty of bringing some pamphlets here that I will leave for you to kind of help talk about some of those preventive measures that older Americans can take. I don't know if Lynn, I know we got that strike, that working group we were talking about. Maybe you can talk about that for the group if possible.
Which
The financial crimes.
Yes.
Older.
One of the points of emphasis at the Department of Justice, among a few, is elder financial abuse. This is a matter that's becoming, unfortunately, more and more prevalent in society. I think it coincides significantly with the opioid problem, as younger people are becoming more and more dependent on opioids. They are looking for sources of revenue, and unfortunately, often that comes from elderly adults or persons that they're caring for. So we have formed a task force to look at specifically elder financial abuse. Again, this is another area where the use of the federal grand jury comes in very helpful, because if an elderly person comes into Chief Fox and speaks to one of his detectives and says, I gave $300,000 to this fellow who told me he was going to invest my money for me, and I check now and I've got $5,000. There's not a whole lot of investigation that the Enfield Police Department can do with that information, because at that point, they don't know if that person simply made some bad investments or if the person stole the money. Through the use of the federal grand jury, some subpoenas are issued to check the financial accounts of that person, and we can immediately find out where that money went, when it went into his account, where it went out of the account after it was given to him, and immediately determine, no, this wasn't simply a foolish investment. He used part of the money to buy himself a new Ferrari. He used part of the money to take a vacation. He used another part of the money for some other personal use. So the federal grand jury is a very important tool in elder financial abuse, and something that the Department of Justice is taking very seriously. But again, I would just wrap up by thanking you for having us here. We've all been doing this a long, long time. I think the chief and I must have started together. But while collaboration among us is very important, as has often been said, and I know everyone here would echo it, the most important thing is the community. If the community supports law enforcement, as Enfield does, and the community supports the people in that community, you're going to have a good situation. You're going to have a good community. And I think that's one of the reasons why Enfield has been such a special place for a very long time, is because it's a community that does care for itself, cares about itself, and its role not only within the state of Connecticut, but within the nation at large. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. We together applaud your interest level in this most important subject, and hope you continue on in that stead. There's a lot of work to be done. You can see that you've got some people that are really grinding it out on a daily basis, but your recognition of the importance of this and the job that we do just by having us here today is greatly appreciated.
It continues to be an honor to serve as your chief of police. Equally, it's an honor to call these folks my contemporaries.
You gentlemen are welcome here anytime. I mean, we have an open invitation. I know you're welcome to come anytime. And also, we do have buildings, and if the FBI would like to make an open invitation, well, just contact Mr. Bronson. We'd love to have you.
Well, we just can't thank you enough for your time this evening and for your lifetime commitment to the service of the state and the country. And I'll just say we have a wonderful 4th of July festival, one of the best in New England this weekend, so please come and join us. I know Aries back with his family, might be looking for something to do. And we always want to bring the FBI or our federal partners back up here, so Aries, Chris and Maria can tell you. In Springfield, after Labor Day, there's a great Greek fest, and there's a great one in East Long Meadow in October. So come on up and be our guest, and we'd love to have you back. Thank you all, gentlemen, so very, very much.
Thank you. Quick motion to adjourn? Councilor Mark, Councilor Sakala, second, Sferrazzo, all those in favor by show of hands. We'll have a quick recess, 5 minutes, and we'll have the regular meeting started. We will start at 7:13. Everyone, call the regular meeting Monday, July 1st, 2019 of the regular Town Council, Enfield Town Council meeting, starting at 7:15. Prayer. I ask everyone to please rise. This is a prayer of self-improvement. Save me from my pride, Lord. Save me from my focus on just me. Help me learn to serve others. Show me how to be. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
Here.
Councilor Muller.
Here.
Councilor Sferrazzo.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Suzak. Here. Councilor Ungary. Here. Councilor Bosco.
Here.
Councilor Sakala. Councilor Crisati.
Here.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Denny.
Here.
Councilor Keiner.
Here.
There's 9 members present, 2 are absent.
Item number 4, the fire evacuation announcement. In case of a fire, we have exit in the back of the room. Please orderly exit left or to your right. We also have an exit sign to our left, your right. First door out in the hall, down the stairs and out to the parking lot in case of a fire. We move on to item 5, minutes of preceding meetings. The regular meeting, June 3rd, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. By Councilor Muller. Seconded by Councilor Unger. Any additions, deletions?
I just want to thank the
Counsel-
staff for the Head Start additions and keeping them verbatim. I think, it really was important. And I just want to thank them for the work.
Any other comments? Hearing none by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 9 in favor, 0 against. We move on to the regular meeting of June 17th, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
By Councilor Muller. By Councilor Ungar. Is there any additions, deletions, edits to the minutes? Hearing none by show of hands. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? 7 in favor, 2 abstentions. Now, do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting of June 17, 2019?
So moved.
By Councilor Muller. Oh, I didn't say special meeting before? Sorry. All right, so I apologize, he caught me. This is the regular meeting, so I apologize, of June 17, 2019. Do I have a motion to approve? Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Ungar. Any additions, deletions, corrections, other than the word regular as opposed to special? So I apologize. Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed, abstentions? 7 in favor, 2 abstentions. Move on to item 6, special guest. We made it. Lodestar Energy, Jamie Smith.
I can provide a brief introduction. So our special guests tonight are Jamie Smith from Lodestar Energy and his partner. And Lodestar Energy is a Connecticut-based company that develops commercial and public sector solar projects. They're also one out of 2 companies that have approached Enfield regarding the state's solar virtual net metering program as approved by recent legislation. And Mr. Smith is here to speak with us about an opportunity for Enfield to purchase solar power at a reduced rate and just to educate all of us about virtual net metering. And I have distributed copies of the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties getting it online up on the screen, so we'll definitely post it after the meeting, and all of you have that. Thank you.
Come right up, yep, if you wouldn't mind.
My partner, Jeff Masel.
Welcome,
as
Jeff.
well.
Just make sure that little light's on you bright and you right in that microphone.
All right.
If you wouldn't mind, just your name and title, and you have the floor.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name, again, is Jamie Smith. It's my partner, Jeff Masel. We are founders and owners of Lodestar Energy, a Connecticut-based solar developer, as Kasha pointed out. We met with Don, Lori, Kasha, Mark on Wednesday, and really appreciate the quick turnaround, the opportunity to come speak with you today. I'm going to take about 10 or 15 minutes and talk about the program, but I want to start with an overview and kind of summarize what I'm going to talk to you about. The town of Enfield has an opportunity to save about $80,000 a year, each year for the next 20 years, through a program called virtual net metering. There are only 16 towns in Connecticut who have ever participated in this program. The program was funded in a pilot that quickly ran out of money, and there has been no opportunity for the last 2 years for towns to participate until, as Kasha points out, this recent legislative session where a small amount of additional money was set aside. So we're really here to talk about taking advantage of this moment and this opportunity. I'm going to move along. I think you guys have numbered slides. I hope you do. Slide number 2 is just about us. We're a Connecticut-based company. We have done 25% of all virtual net metering projects in the state have been through Lodestar Energy. Slide 3, 4, and 5. We have built 4 solar projects, about $30 million under this program. The towns that have benefited are Vernon, Suffield, and South Windsor have benefited. The projects were built in Barkhamsted, Suffield, and then in East Windsor. And you can just see a little bit more on the projects in slide 3, 4, and 5. We are offering the town of Enfield the exact same deal, exactly, that we offered Vernon, we offered Suffield, we offered South Windsor, and we offered East Windsor, who's on a new project of ours. So this is the same contract, the same savings, the same everything. And I'll talk a little bit about references, but you can certainly call these towns and say, did they do what they said they were going to do? Did we get the benefits that we were promised? Slide 6 is a little history of the program, a little bit of a timeline. It's an old program. As I mentioned, only 16 towns have ever participated in it. The new energy bill, HB 5002, which hasn't actually been signed by the governor yet, approves $10 million. That will go very quickly. We've been talking to Eversource already. There are companies lining up to get in. It is a first come, first serve basis program. What is interesting about our history and projects is we built our first project in Suffield. Suffield wasn't ready to get the benefits, so Vernon got the benefits. We built our next projects in East Windsor, and guess who participated? Suffield, because they missed the boat the first time. Same thing now. East Windsor is now signed up to a project, even though the East Windsor project had Suffield on it. So this is virtual. It doesn't matter where we build the project, where you guys can get the benefits. We do have a project in Powder Hill Road in Enfield that we're going to be building. So there's a nice opportunity for you to get the benefits of a project in your town, but it's unnecessary. You can get the benefits anywhere. It's virtual, and I'll explain kind of how that works coming up. If you look at slide 7, this is the "it's too good to be true" slide. Basically, this program doesn't use your buildings. It doesn't use your property. It doesn't require you to change how you buy electricity. It provides upfront savings immediately, and it's guaranteed over the contract life. The only thing I'll say about this, because this comes up, hey, that just sounds like too good a deal, is call Melissa Mack in Suffield, call Matt Galligan at South Windsor, call Jeffrey O'Neill at Vernon, and ask them, did the program do what it was supposed to do? Because they're going to tell you exactly. Slide 8, this is the one I'm going to spend the most time on. It's how do I get my credits? And this is a really important slide because this really is fundamentally how the program works. So imagine we had a solar project in a field across the street, and we built it. As it's producing electrons, we just push those electrons right back into the wires right across the street. And Eversource uses those wherever they want to use them. They use them down the street, they use them over here, they use them there. It doesn't make any difference. They say to us how many were produced, how many electrons were produced, and where do you want the benefits to go? And we say, account ABC, DEF from the town of Enfield. And they send those credits in dollars to your electric bill. So you're going to get your normal electric bill that you always get, and it's going to say you owe $1,000. And at the bottom of that bill is going to say solar plant credits, $500 worth of credit. Okay? So you're buying these dollar bills, and then at the same time that you get that $500 credit, you're going to get a bill from us for 85 cents on the dollar. Whatever credit amount, whatever number of dollars showed up on your electric bill, you're going to get a parallel bill from us for 85 cents on the dollar. So I'm going to stop there for a second. This is a little bit of a confusing concept. So doesn't matter what you guys pay for electricity, doesn't matter how much electricity you use, you're buying dollar bills for 85 cents. This is the way the program works. So let me stop, and because this is an important point, and maybe make sure folks get that. And maybe ask Jeff if there's anything I can do to explain that better.
Anyone have a quick question?
Does that make sense?
Right up.
No, I'm not getting what he's. Hey, I understand the performance contract.
I'm just making sure. So you make your money on the 85 cents.
Right, you're getting 50 cents.
So my only question. So before you answer that question, so understanding surrounding towns where you've done this,
right?
Our capacity for energy is certainly much greater than the other towns. My guess, you call them electrons, neutrons, whatever you want to call them.
Electrons?
Electrons.
Kilowatt hours.
I got to assume we got a lot of more electrons. So my question then becomes.
Go ahead.
15% sounds good.
Right.
I'm not sure it really sounds good. I'll stop there.
Vernon would use probably more with their water treatment facility than you guys used. I mean, water treatment is a big user of energy.
We have a plant that's actually under construction.
The limitation is the size of the solar project. We're limited to building a 3 megawatt solar project, which means it can only take about 3.6 million kilowatt hours. You guys use twice that amount.
Right.
So you actually are in a good spot to take 2 solar projects if you're so interested in doing it. And I understand that you've got another group that's interested in doing this with you as well. I would say do them both. If you think the program makes sense, do them both.
So sorry for, the people who get the credit would be the town of Enfield. And what about, so it would be a resident who has solar panels, I'm assuming, no?
This program is a different program than the residential solar. This is a commercial program that's really set up for municipalities only to participate. And only 16 municipalities have participated in the state out of 169.
Okay.
This new program will probably only be available to about the same number of municipalities. So I expect there will be 16 or less municipalities that participate in this new program. And when they're full, and we don't know what the next program is going to look like. And we worked pretty tirelessly to have this from a 2-year gap where we had no program to get this program going again.
Councilor Denny, then Deputy Mayor
Yes.
Suzak. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Would this benefit us more if you put a solar panels here on town property? For an example, at our town farm dump when there's open space.
It benefits you differently and independently. They don't affect each other at all. If that is the right thing to do for you because you guys want to offset your energy by putting solar panels on your buildings or on your dump, it's a great idea. It's fantastic. This is a different program. This is a financial transaction. Right. This is buying dollar bills.
Okay.
If you put something on your building, above the roof here, that's called net metering, and what that does is that takes away how much you need to buy. So
But only on the site where you build it.
Yeah.
Net metering has to be co-located at the facility. So I sit on Avon's Energy Commission. I'm a resident of Avon, and we put it on our schools, and that was great. We worked with a well-known commercial company. We put out an RFP, but it was a long process for a relatively small-sized solar system.
So this is a different.
This is different, and you can spread these credits out to any account you want, any account in the town. You can go to right now, your biggest accounts are your high school, your middle school, and your elementary school, but you can go to town hall, you can go to the police station, you can go anywhere with these credits. Every 6 months, we tell Eversource, where do those credits go? You remember the drawing that showed the accounts and the going in the Eversource bill? We can use up to 5 accounts, and we can direct them any way we want. We can say 10%, 20%, 40%, 30%. We can do anything we want. We can switch it around every 6 months. But the concept that's tricky is it's just dollar. It's literally your regular bill with the credit for dollar bills on the bottom. And then we're going to come along and say, we gave you $100 worth of credit, pay us $85. We gave you $1,000 worth of credit, pay us $850. We gave you $10,000 worth of credit, pay us $8,500. And the timing is such that we're not going to ask you to pay us until the credits show up. So there's not a lot of risk. If we go to build this project in Powder Hill and the siting council says no, or you guys say no, or you have no risk. You're not obligated to do anything unless the credit shows up on your bill.
I'm good.
Deputy Mayor Suzak, then Councilor Bosco, then Councilor Speranza.
Okay, so how much space does a 3 megawatt plant take up?
About 12 acres.
About 12 acres. I mean, okay.
And we've got a site here in town, Spazzarini's old, I guess, gravel pit on
Okay.
Powder Hollow, Powder Hill.
Powder Hill Road.
Powder Hill Road.
Okay.
But we've got sites in other places as well, and as I've said, it doesn't matter.
Right, so basically, you're generating power, it goes directly to Eversource. They pay a certain amount to us for the generation of the power. I guess, do we get any personal property tax from the solar panels being located in the town of Enfield?
It's exempt under statute. And so the answer is probably not. One of the reasons we like to work with the towns is because if we sell it to Suffield or East Windsor or South Windsor, you can imagine the town doesn't feel too good about having a site here in town that's tax
Correct.
exempt. So we think it's especially helpful for us to do that. Now, when we built our first one in Suffield, there was no statute that exempted it. And we told Suffield we'd pay a fair pilot. And we do have a tax agreement with Suffield, but it's the only town that we have a tax agreement with.
Well, because our one that we have coming in does have, it's pilot-like.
And that project is not exempt under the statute. So
Correct.
That's a different size, different program.
Mhm.
Everything's different about that one.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So let me push to the end because there's what we need today is very simple and it's very little obligation and it's very little risk. There is a pool of money that's sitting in Eversource, and it is first come, first serve for this program. The first people to put their account numbers in, they will set those dollars aside for those folks. So what I have provided to your town attorney is a 2-sentence document that says, we, the town of Enfield, appoint Lodestar to basically to submit our beneficial accounts to this program. So that's sentence number 1. Sentence number 2 says, this can be canceled at any time for any reason with no further obligations. That is what I'm looking for from the town, and that will set your place in line in the queue at Eversource. And that will mean that if we're lucky enough to be elected to get some of these virtual net metering credits, then we'd come back and sit down with you and put a contract in front of you. That would be the same contract that we put in front of Suffield, South Windsor, and Vernon for a 15% discount on virtual net metering credits. So what we'd like you to do is to say, yes, I'm willing to have this option to participate in this program. And that's kind of what we're looking to do. So it's a beneficial, what do you call it, Jeff? It's a beneficial account? Or no, authorized representative form.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilor Bosco.
What makes you different that you don't have to pay taxes compared to the other people?
Well, we don't touch your schools, we don't touch your roads, we build.
They don't either.
Well,
we didn't set the law.
We pay real estate taxes.
Yeah,
Okay, so you pay real estate taxes.
absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
when you said exempted, it sounded to me like
Personal
property taxes.
Personal property.
So, yeah.
And so what you're doing is really, if we sign this and we become part of this program, we're just guaranteeing you a spot to buy your energy.
You're guaranteeing us a spot to get those virtual net metering credits, which are limited. There's 8
But
million of them in Eversource.
it's just a guarantee for you that,
Yeah.
so we get 15% just because we're going to guarantee you that we're going to buy this
Per year is an
electric.
$80,000 benefit to the town, and over the 20-year term is $1.6 million. So it's a substantial benefit.
Why we need you is your credit. So this is a funny concept. I need a 20-year guarantee to pay 85 cents on the dollar. I can't go to a store down the street and do that. I can't be comfortable that they're going to be around in 20 years. I can be comfortable that the town of Enfield is going to be here paying their bills in 20 years. So you become very attractive to us. Towns become very attractive to us for that reason, is because of your credit. And I have to look up you guys in Moody's and see where your credit is before I ever come to your town, because our banks are going to require that you're a good credit. So good job, you're a good credit.
And we're going to negotiate a little harder on that price too, by the way, but Councilman Speraza? Sorry,
Can I ask, Maria, do you have questions about the authorized rep forms? Is that?
No, you can't ask her anything.
We'll get to that once Carl asks his question, then I'll turn it over to you. Carl, go ahead.
I'm not allowed to ask questions, right? I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
I have 2 questions for
Sure.
you. I understand that you're exempt from personal property tax by statute, but you do pay real estate tax.
Correct.
But you did say because Suffield was the first one, you pay them both.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you're exempt, does that mean if we were to agree, you couldn't negotiate with us where we could get a percentage of property tax as well as the real estate tax. You're not exempt from doing that if you wanted to.
No, we're not exempt from that. And
You don't have to.
And there was a bill proposed this term that was a reasonable amount that we didn't propose the bill, and we thought that was a fair bill, and it didn't pass, but
But I mean, with each individual town, we could make that, we don't have to just accept you're exempt.
So if you want them to sign this evening, we can add it, and you can agree that you'll pay 50% of the personal property?
right?
If we're horse trading here,
No problem.
And the second question is, so I understand that the electric bill's $1,000, we stay with Eversource. We're going to get those credits of 85%. So we're going to pay 85 cents on the dollar, and you're going to send the other 15% to Eversource so Eversource is made whole? Because they got to get their $1,000, right?
Well, so we generate it's a little different. We generate the power, and then Eversource buys it at a number from us. And we sell that credit to you for 85 cents on the dollar. So you're saving the 15 cents. We're taking a haircut on that because, we can build the facility cheaper and better than Eversource can generate power and move it from Hydro-Quebec or, Millstone or wherever they're buying it. I mean, the fact that it's generated locally saves them a tremendous amount on transmitting the power and distributing around the state.
And they charge us $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to upgrade the interconnection, the substations, the lines, and they improve the infrastructure with our, we fund all of that. So it's a good thing.
All right, thank you.
And we've studied these sites to figure out, can we take the load? Is there three-phase out there? We've worked with the engineers at Eversource to say, is this a site where you guys want power? And in this case, it is a site where.
You understand that the middle school actually will be under construction starting next year. So it'll be a much larger site than it currently is.
Yeah, you guys are, after that, you go after you get those three, you go 293 Elm Street is good, big. Town Hall, Alcorn, Stowe, Henry Barnard, I don't know, those elementary schools?
Right.
Yes. Yeah, those are all, those are all good-sized loads.
Anyone else have any questions? Anything? I'm sorry, Councilor. Sorry.
So this facility is, what'd you say, Powder Hill Road? And could you just, unless I missed it, how big is this facility?
3 megawatts, DC, 12 acres of solar.
12 acres. Are there any other spots in town besides this one that you have your eye on?
We have 4 projects, including this
But
one.
not in town.
Not in town, but in other towns.
No, but in here?
No.
Besides that?
No.
So that would be the only spot that you would
It
be
is.
interested in?
It is. Correct. But again, if we gave you credits from a site in North Canaan or a site in Winchester, it's not as optically pretty, but it doesn't make any difference at all. The credits show up on your bills the same way, whether you guys get them from a project anywhere located. We like the idea, but as I mentioned to you, 3 times the town where we put the project got the next project, not the project that we built, and that's the way it happens. So.
Deputy Mayor Suzak and Councilor Carter.
No, I'm good.
Okay, so will you be the landowners that this sits on, or are you leasers?
So we currently have an option to lease, but we're in discussions to purchase it, so.
Okay, all right.
That would be our preference, but we don't always, the landowners don't always like it.
Okay, so I guess that answers that question. And I guess when you looked at these numbers, did you look at them before or after our performance contract?
After your what contract?
Performance
For-
contract. So,
We've changed all the lighting in all the schools and
so
everything
these
like
are
that.
up-to-date numbers.
Lori provided them a week ago, so.
Well, because it says, okay, so this would be the annex?
The 3 that I suggested in my presentation were the high school, Fermi, and JFK. That was all we needed because you guys use so much in those 3. That's all I suggested we would use.
Well, I
as
know,
3
that's
accounts.
why I think that you might be looking at old data.
As long as we can get up to the number which we can easily with any one of your 5 accounts, we'll be
Right, so,
fine. And
so basically you could buy it for any facilities that we have that require
And
electricity.
I only looked at 11 months of data, so there's even more. I only looked at 11 months. That's all you had, a rolling 11 months of data.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Kiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously the first that I've seen of this. I'm not sure if any other members of the council have had, were privy to this information. Personally, I'd like to hear from the town manager and from the town attorney. I mean, have you had the opportunity to do any research on this? Have you spoken to these gentlemen in the past? For how long? And are you comfortable with this?
Certainly, and that's understandable. Kasha and Lori met with these gentlemen last Thursday, and they had an extended conversation with them. We were able to confirm these other towns in the area. Beyond that, that was the extent of it, only because, as they've said, it's first come, first serve. So we invited them immediately. That was last Thursday. They told us about the urgency of it because the spots are going to go quickly. So we did the due diligence, said get them before the council to answer your questions. In reviewing this document, the town attorney believes it is very low risk because it gives us the virtual opportunity to get out of it for any reason if we just give them that in writing. And this would be subject, of course, to an agreement and contract that would be forthcoming that she would have time to review, go over, present to the council to get your authority to have me sign that. Tonight, simply, we would suspend the rules, add this to miscellaneous, just to allow me to sign this document. We'll pass it down so everybody can see it. And the town attorney, I won't speak for her. She can speak for herself now.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. As the manager said, we would then look at a contract much more thoroughly. The thing that gives me some consolation, because I don't like to review anything on the fly, owner reserves the right to cancel this appointment at any time for any reason without further obligation. That seems to me, provide a fair amount of comfort. And then when a contract comes in, we would look at it, obviously, very carefully.
You hear that?
Yes, thank you. I certainly respect your opinions, and I feel more comfortable now voting on this. Thank you.
You all set, sir? Anything else, gentlemen?
Thank you for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
So the only thing I just want to be clear, two things. So are you, you're going before the citing council, correct? Or you already been, will there be a public hearing on this for Enfield?
They will consult with planning and zoning, and they will consult with Conservation Commission, and that will be a decision between those three bodies.
Okay, so
And
this
we'll
will go.
be back before you.
This will go to our, okay.
Letter to.
Good, it'll go to our land commission. And just as long as, I just want to be clear, 'cause I agree, because I appreciate the offer, as long as this is not, because again, I think we can negotiate a better deal, just my opinion. And I'm looking forward to having an opportunity to negotiate a better deal, because I understand our energy position in the region.
Thank you, gentlemen. So we're going to be voting later. Hopefully, it will be a positive vote. If you want to stay, otherwise, we can let you know in the morning.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 7, public communications. Again, first time through, 5 minutes. It's almost 7:45. We have an hour in. And please refrain from personalities. I don't like to speak for the council at this time. Sorry. Mr. Young. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Council. This is pretty brief tonight. I'm sure you'll be glad about that. The first thing I want to comment...
You want me to give 50 seconds? Is that what you're saying?
I don't need a lot of time, but let me finish and I'll try. The first thing I want to comment on, they mentioned that they done 25% of those 16 that were completed. Maybe we should find out who the other 75% was done by. That's just a comment that I would like to make. First, I'd like to compliment Mr. Nunes because he said that the St. James Avenue project would start on June 24th, and lo and behold, I don't want to say I was completely surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised that it has started, right? And I'm happy about that. Okay, and I also want to point out that I don't think the town is doing the taxes as a portion of the elderly financial abuse, as in spite of what some people might think from what I've read in the recent comments on social media, going back to what the police chiefs have said, that elderly financial abuse is a big problem, but I don't think that our town taxes have done that. I have a few questions regarding the Water Pollution Control Authority. As of June 30th, 2018, on the audited financial statement, the advance to the Water Pollution Fund had a balance of $2,492,000. What is the balance as of June 30th, 2019? With the reduction from $36 to $30 a quarter for approximately 93% of the water companies, customers, water customers, what is the revised decrease in the anticipated 2020 revenue for the WPC? Since we are delaying the capital expenditures of $500,000 for the sewer collection system in advance of road work for a year and delaying the implementation on the Novak study personnel increases of $591,000 until the plant reconstruction has been completed, does that mean, A, we will still have $300,000 to reduce the debt to the town? B, will the excess go to reduce the negative fund balance? And what amount does the finance department and the town manager expect this to be? The last thing I'd like to ask is, the WPC proposed a 2020 budget for the part of the total cost of the upgrade. The bonding other fund sources will be $4,670,711 at 2%. The state recently sold $280 million of bonds at 2%, with $7.6 million targeted for the Enfield Water Pollution Control Facility. Can you tell us if we are going to increase our funding source, or are these monies above the $4,670,711 part of the amount due to the Enfield for the prison's share of the approximately $2.5 million for the water pollution control facility? If there is now approximately $425,000 left over as additional funds, what are the plans, if any, for it? Thank you.
Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the council? For the first time? Bob? Welcome.
Thank you. Bob T. Katz, 85 Woodgate Circle. I think on the solar panel, who's going to be responsible for the repairs when a solar panel stops working? Is the town going to be responsible, or are they going to be responsible? Because you do get an energy efficiency loss throughout the 20 years. So is it going to be as good as it is today, the first day as the 10-year day? Are they going to replace the panels as needed, or is the town going to be responsible for replacing the panels? On this matter of Danbury, I spoke with the mayor of Danbury yesterday. They have a 24-hour approval of businesses coming into Danbury. It's true. You can sign up as a business, and you can be in business tomorrow. We don't do that in Enfield at this point, and they do that, and they have approved 900 businesses. Also, Danbury does produce their own power. I learned that today when I was in Bethel. They sell their power to the surrounding towns, and the people pay for the power from Danbury. Danbury has an airport, and there's other things about Danbury that has a very positive effect of bringing businesses in. And I did give Chris the mayor's phone number and asked him to talk with him. So there's a lot of things going on in Danbury that we don't do in Enfield, that we should adopt many of these ideas. That also, he does have the lowest water rates, but however, they need to upgrade their sewer and water plant. They're going to have the highest rates. Once they do that, it's going to cost $130 million to upgrade the plant. But he doesn't want to do it because the contractors are going to make $15 million on the deal. I said, that's really, it's a business for the contractors. $15 million is a very small amount. The actual contractors for the schools make $20 to $30 million when they rehab a school, and they have approached that in Enfield, and the middle school is going to be making more profit than the high school. So I just want to leave that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Anyone else like to speak for the council for the second time? George? Anyone else? Last call? I declare public communications closed. Moving on to, item number 8, councilor communications. Councilor Denny.
Yes, I'd just like to reach out and thank everybody in the town, personal friends of mine, from my family, for the outreach that I received and my family received over the tragedy in my family. I want to thank you all again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm humbled to think of all the things that people have done for me and my family. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Kiner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to follow up on some statements that I made at the last town council meeting concerning the PFAS. This is what's known, as I said last time, as a forever chemical. This is a chemical that's can cause thyroid cancer, liver, kidney cancer, and so forth and so on. And we know that the fire departments throughout the state and throughout the country have been using this. Other towns are taking a proactive approach on this. As a matter of fact, Windsor, I guess, is having a public hearing tomorrow on this issue. Kash, I appreciate your getting back to me. You'd indicated you had spoken to one of the 5 fire districts who do claim that they have this chemical in storage, but they haven't used it in a number of years. That's fine, but the other question is, if they're storing this, how safe is it? And I'd like to hear from the other 4 fire districts as to whether or not they have this chemical, whether they're using it, and whether they're storing it. I think the residents of Enfield will be well served to find out what the answers are to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Bosco.
Yeah, through the mayor to town manager. Chris, Town Farm Road has a dead raccoon on top. Needs to get picked up. There's also somebody was so gracious to dump bags of leaves. They've been sitting there for a while, and every meeting I come here, I keep forgetting they're bags of leaves right at the entrance of the Hunters Club. And that corner's our property down in the hill on my side of the road. And there's a lot of trash skewing all up on that street. So if we can take a look at that and get rid of them bags and pick that poor raccoon up. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilor Muller.
I'd like to remind everyone the Enfield 4th of July town celebrations this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, July 5th, 6th, and 7th. Food, fun, and entertainment. Come on down.
Councilor Crisati.
Sounds like a lot of fun, Joe. Okay. Looking forward to it. Over the last week, I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I had many emails sent to me, and many residents have called me about their displeasure, and business owners also in regard to the road diet on Route 5. And I just want to make that known that, there's a lot of people that maybe did not go to the public hearing or have not spoken out. But just want to put it into the record that there's been a lot of people and business owners on Route 5 that have contacted me over this past week about they're not in favor of this. And so I just wanted to bring that out, and I don't think it's a good idea myself. All right, and
we'll address it through the manager. Yeah, no problem.
But I did want to mention that. Just a couple things on in regard to the Commission on Aging. Just 60 residents have been served so far. 37 air conditioning units have been installed, especially with this warm weather and everything. So that if there's anybody that has any minor home repair, contact the Commission on Aging, and I think through Damien's organization, and then we'll set up a scheduled appointment for you. A couple other things I want to mention. I think in regard to the grandparents raising grandchildren, I just want to mention that federal funding restricts support to grandparents 65 and over. There's a lot of grandparents that are younger than that are bringing up their grandchildren, and the funds are needed for them for camping, for their camps, respite, just different programs that are out there. And I know that the Commission on Aging is doing their best in helping these families defray the cost of any types of activities that are going out there. But that that's something that I didn't really understand either. But federal funding, supporting 65 and over, but we have to target the grandparents that are younger than 65 because there are a lot of them out there, and so that's something that we have to take a look at also. I have to mention one thing. I got a phone call, and this has to do with Allied Rehabilitation Services and transition programs for young adults going into the society. Now, through the school system, they have a transition program, and then when they graduate from the transition program, then the families, along with their caseworkers, have to apply to these organizations that are out there. And Allied is the Enfield basis one. And we as a community have to support our Enfield young adults that are going out into their profession, so to say. And we ran into a situation in which there was an individual that was denied access to that program, but through discussion with the family, discussion with some people over at Allied, they are going to be getting another interview with their DSS caseworker and the family. So, I want to thank Allied for assessing the needs of the young adults that are in the community. And I think it's pretty important because Allied services 7 surrounding towns. And so we have to remain cognizant of the young adults. And so the family that did reach out to us, we didn't do anything. This is Allied's program that they run, but I just have to commend them for looking at the problem and they're going to reassess it. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Allied Rehabilitation Services. Then just one other thing that I just want to mention, and it's coming up in summertime's right around the corner, but the Enfield Hall of Fame just selected their class of 2019. The golf outing is September 7th, and the Hall of Fame dinner is Friday, September 6th. 6 members were selected, 1 team, and a George Daly Award. So that is going to, I just wanted to bring that out because the selections were made. All right, and that's it for now. Okay.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and move items B1, B2, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N to miscellaneous and proceed to vote.
Motion to suspend rules. Second. By Councilor Muller. Just a quick question. Suzanne, why do we need to move 2 resignations to miscellaneous? B1 and B2? Do we have to?
They're resignation
They're
letters.
simply resignations.
They're just letters of resignation.
So I think, can we amend the motion, just relieve them on the table and move items, E, F? Right, no. No.
No, resignations.
So amendment made to strike B1 and B2 to move the miscellaneous. The rest, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, move to miscellaneous. Amendment made by myself.
Second.
By Councilor Crissati. Discussion on the amendment? Again, we're voting on the amendment. All those in favor by show of hands. 9 in favor, 0 against. Now the motion to suspend the rules as amended. Second by Counselor Denny. Any discussion? Hearing none by show of hands. All those in favor? 9 in favor, 0 against. Do we need to do it now or at the end of the meeting to add the other?
You have to add to new business. This is miscellaneous.
We can do it now to new business? Not to miscellaneous, right?
The new business.
Okay,
Oh, we
so,
want to put it in item.
right, so we'll make a motion, I have a motion to move the resolution presented tonight on Lodestar to items for discussion, to suspend the rules and add the item for discussion. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Counselor Muller. Any discussion on the motion to add to items for discussion? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Against? 9 in favor. Now I'll defer to Deputy Mayor. Would you make one more motion to suspend the rules?
Sure. I'm going to make a motion to suspend the rules and move the agreement with Lodestar from discussion to miscellaneous. I'll put it as item O
Perfect.
and
We have
proceed to vote.
motion to suspend rules, add as item O. Do I have a second? By Counselor Denny. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none by show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? 9 in favor, 0 against. You have the floor, sorry.
I'm all set.
Are you all set? Anyone else have anything? Counselor Ungary.
I just wanted to congratulate all the graduates from Enfield High School who graduated last week. They had a beautiful ceremony there. Also, I wanted to congratulate the Enfield Together Coalition. They had a subcommittee do a public service announcement, and they entered it in the state of Connecticut, and they came in first place. So I want to congratulate them on that.
I just have 3 quick items kind of on top of the graduation. I just want to give the superintendent some credit, who made a very tough decision to put the kids' favor of everyone. It was raining like heck around 3 o'clock during the afternoon that Tuesday, and everyone knows in graduation you would much rather have it outside, especially in a beautiful facility that is Enfield High. He hung in there. I'm sure he was under a tremendous amount of pressure, as I know he was, and it actually did start to rain. And again, Enfield's the little rain doesn't bother anyone in Enfield, and it was a great ceremony, and of course, as it should, things cleared up, and it was a great ceremony honoring the kids. On that note, and again, I'm not trying to pander, but I know it may look, I want to congratulate I actually just want to shout out to the Enfield Patch for actually highlighting all our kids who go to college and putting them out on the patch, recognizing them, making the dean's list, and anything else they do. I mean, if you take a look, it's out there. We have some very talented kids, and we got to keep them in town. I mean, so I congratulate the Patch for highlighting that. And just my last thing, it's just to remind people that there's just good going on all the time. And again, this is kind of an interesting one. I just want to recognize the good folks at Mass Mutual. Obviously, a little bit of a sore subject since we're losing the corporation from the beautiful building at edge of 91, though we're working very hard, hopefully, to get someone in there. However, to those folks, they came and they volunteered down at the car show down on Friday night. Again, still being members of our community, even though technically the building will be moving to Springfield/Boston. But again, just those little things that matter, and folks who, obviously the Enfield community means something to those people. So congratulations to those people from Mass Mutual who still volunteered, even though they will be moving north of the border, very shortly. So again, just wanted to highlight that.
The clerk has a point of order for you.
I do not think that you moved A, 1, and 2, the consent agenda, to miscellaneous for action. I heard the B, 1, and 2, which
We
has been
didn't actually, because
removed.
it wasn't on the,
And
so can we leave it on item discussion, just talk to it there, is that all right? So I think Counselor Connor has some questions on it, so maybe we just leave it, is that okay?
all right, I just didn't want it to be overlooked if you
So
wanted
we'll
to
leave it on
adopt
the
it.
item for discussion so you can ask your questions.
I appreciate that.
Is that okay?
That's great, thank you.
Fair with everyone? Okay, good. Thank you, Suzanne. Moving on, item 9, Town Manager Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, for those who didn't join us for our special presentation this evening, and for those who are joining us now, I would just like to commend to them. They can go to our website and watch the 6 to 7 special meeting we had earlier. We were fortunate to have guests from the FBI, U.S. Attorney, State's Attorney, and local police give us a talk on law enforcement efforts in Connecticut, and I think it was very worthwhile. So anybody who is watching now, I asked them if they're interested, they could watch that on our website. It'll be listed on the manager's website tomorrow. I would like to say that we do listen to those who come to public communication. Bob had come last time and had some comments about Danbury. We did follow up. our economic development people call there to inquire about the 24-hour permitting. It's limited in nature, but it is something that's beneficial. It's something, they're a bigger, they're a city. They have better staff, but it's something we're going to aspire to. And really what they've done is they've sort of done a one-stop shopping where on one form for simple building permits and things along those lines, not things that require planning and zoning or ZBA approval, but they can go in and they've consolidated where the building official, the ZEO, and others can sign off on one sheet. So it's something we're looking at, and we thank him for bringing it to our attention, and we'll try to do that here as well in time. Water pollution control, Mr. Young had some questions. We will have business for water pollution control at the next meeting, August 5th, and we'll answer his questions then and there. In regard to Mr. Connor's inquiry of the fire departments, Kasha has inquired a couple of times. She has reached out. We have gotten information back from one. I would just like to remind the council, feel free to contact the fire departments and the chiefs yourself, because as you understand, unlike Windsor and other communities in the state, we don't oversee the fire departments. So we can ask, but we in no way can compel them to supply information to us. We have a very good rapport with them, but I want to tell you, we ask, and then if they want to answer, they can, and we've asked, and we will continue to, but feel free to call them yourself because we have no jurisdiction over them. In regard to the DOT road diet, we have invited, just as we did with the South River Street Bridge, we have invited the DOT officials to come that were there a few weeks ago to make a presentation, do the summer schedules. They will be available the first meeting in September to give another brief presentation and answer questions of the full council that evening.
So to be clear to Bob and to the public, if it's the first meeting in September, so Ed was there along with Don and I. The gentleman was clear. I want to be for the record here. For the record, they made the comment the council has to endorse it if they're going to move forward with
Correct.
any road diet.
Yes.
So that will be for a vote in September now, not August. It'll be September.
September, just as we did in the South River Street Bridge, they came and then you had to vote affirmatively by 6 or more. It will be the same procedure for the road diet.
So I know we had chatted, we're going to make sure that we have press releases out for the public so everyone knows that they can show up here and they're going to be here in September. Again, they won't be able to speak at the public, the presentation, but they'll be able to do public communications. And if we schedule to vote that night, we'll have it that night.
Yes.
So go ahead, Councilor
Yeah.
Connor.
Thank you. Chris, I'm not sure I understood what you were saying. Are you saying that the 4 other fire districts weren't asked and they have not been asked? It almost appears as though they're refusing to respond.
Kasha can respond. My point is this. We can be a facilitator between you and the fire departments, but it's no different if I ask than if you do. So I'm saying don't please hesitate if any of you have questions of the departments to ask yourself. Kasha can tell you she has inquired. She's heard from one chief and she made the report to you. But I'm just saying I can't compel them to answer us. We have no authority over them. That's all I'm saying. They're separate districts. We've asked. We can ask again, but if you feel compelled, feel free to call the chiefs as well. That was my only point.
So the administration would have no problem if anyone here on the council were to contact.
No, in this circumstance, they don't work
find out.
Right, they don't work for us. It's like calling a state agency or an independent housing authority or others. There would be no preclusion under the charter because they are not a government branch of the Enfield town government.
And again, to make sure I heard this correctly, the other 4 districts, all 5 districts were asked. Is that right?
No, I have spoken with 2 fire chiefs at the time. I did not actually go and survey all the fire chiefs. I just needed to get an idea whether they have it or not. Both responded affirmatively that they do have it. However, they have not used it in recent years. They are actually, from my understanding, awaiting communication from Connecticut Deep on how to proceed, seeing the recent media attention to this issue. And I was awaiting written communication on this issue to provide to you from the fire chief I had spoken with. I have not yet received it. It's not yet ready. So that is the information I have so far.
Would you feel comfortable if we waited for another week? If we waited for another week or 2, perhaps they will respond to you? Or are you suggesting that they're not going to respond?
No, they were very helpful when I spoke with them. Both of them were, and I think they would respond. I had no communication issues on this front. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Denny, go ahead.
We have I'm a liaison to the Fire Chiefs Association, so I attend those meetings on Thursdays, and one's coming up. So I'll formally ask them at the meeting if they could give something to the town, if they're going to dispose of it, how they're storing it, et cetera, et cetera. I can only ask, but All right?
And just for the record, we actually invited them to come to the August meeting for another matter. Maybe this is another, we can add it as item B to Councilor Kiner's question. Right, I would assume we could ask them if they do come to the August meeting we've invited them to.
Well, there's an item on the agenda in regard to the fire protection.
Yeah.
I know Debbie, and she's watching at home. We did extend an invitation. I think we had one respond back. They won't come, but again, we'll extend the invitation here, and we'll extend it through Mr. Denny on Thursday to invite them to come and discuss that agenda item if they're
That'd be
available.
Two items, so Bill, we could ask them and discuss it if they come in August.
That's fine.
Is that fair? Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else, sir? Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Two updates. The first would be as we are still meeting on Mondays in regard to the physical plant for Stowe, the merger of Head Start and the ERC. We met again this morning. We'll continue to meet. The Friday meeting on curriculum, some schedules, they'll be meeting intermittently to get their business done. But I can give you these updates. In regard to the Eagle Academy, which is now going to be housed at Head Start, final plans for the building alterations that were needed there were submitted Friday. The electrical permit for doors was approved by the building department and the fire marshal for the new Eagle Academy at Head Start. In regard to the temporary air conditioning, the temporary air conditioning that will be in place this end of the summer was approved by the building department and by the fire marshal. The purchase order is in place. It will be installed by August 15th. In the amount, again, I'll remind, is of $14,400, American Spot Cooling. Regard to the permanent air conditioning, we told you we received the bid from Carrier. We will go out to a formal bid process. Again, Carrier submitted a bill of $100,000. The other two have not been forthcoming that looked at the project, but we're going to go and not waste any time and go out to the formal bid. But again, the quote we received was... Excuse me, it was $210,000. We have a $140,000 credit from Honeywell. So we'll be going out to the formal bid process. The $100,000 is for the parking. That's on your agenda this evening. Hopefully the transfer will take place. That's on your agenda, and the contractor is slated to actually work and begin tomorrow. And we also did a funding for the dividers that are going to be needed for the classrooms in the gym. So that's the update. We remain on track from the town side, working with the Board of Education for that merger. I would also mention that Congressman Courtney is coming tomorrow at 11:30 to visit Stowe and tour the program. He's aware of what the merger is and what our plans are. And I won't speak for him, but I think his visit speaks volumes for him to come and support this program.
Anything?
Lastly,
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry, I thought you
the
were-
Adult Daycare Center, Damien is here. He can come up. As we've told you, we're working diligently and assiduously to try to enhance the program within the parameters of the funding that you currently have. We have an acting director now, who is Jessica Russell, who is well-liked and respected, we had a scheduled retirement, and she's acting director until we can recruit a full-time director. I'm going to speak because Jason Neely isn't here. We've had meetings with Jason. He's director of libraries, oversees the senior center. He's talked to his recreation people. Kash has been instrumental in this and meeting with Damon to try to come up with programs that are innovative and try to enhance people coming there. The library is going to help bolster our outreach efforts. They're going to try to offer some services that haven't been provided there in the past. One of them is they have an abundance of books that they've sometimes put for sale. They're going to augment and update a library study at the ADC with books from our library for use by those there. The Senior Center is going to be looking at free programming that they can put on at the Senior Center when folks from the ADC are there and they're visiting. Extra ceramic classes are one possibility. And also, they are going to recruit volunteers from the Senior Center for those who might be interested in volunteering there at the Adult Daycare Center. And there's going to be more collaboration between the Senior Center and the Adult Daycare on an ongoing basis. Pedicare is being one example when they're at the Senior Center to avail themselves of that service. We're not going to get into it today. We can do a tour. I think I mentioned previously we did look about bringing or sharing the Senior Center with the Adult Daycare because of the licensing requirements and the facility layout there. I think that the cost, the licensing impediments are too much to overcome. Requirements for the ADC and the stability of that fragile clientele is probably not conducive for them to be permanently at the senior center, and would severely interrupt services that are currently being provided, which would also involve large-scale and expensive remodeling and moving of services and the cessation of some services at the senior center. Now, I tell you this not because staff said it. We went there and looked at it hands-on to see what we would have to do. So I'm going to arrange, so council, it's like, the show me state, show me. So we're going to arrange coming up probably after the summer a little bit when we try these other outreach programs to actually have a tour and have you come out there and see. Damien is going to address what he's been doing since we last spoke to enhance from his point of view the attraction and the hope that people will come to the adult daycare center.
Welcome, Damien.
Thank you, Council. I'm Damien Humphrey, Acting Director of Social Services for the Town of Enfield. And like the town manager said, we have been diligently looking at ways that we can enhance our programs, partner with the Recreation Department and the Library Department. And it's been a great collaboration and sharing of ideas. And one of the things that we're going to be doing, and we've done, is post for the program manager position of the Adult Day Center. We've had one applicant so far under the current job description. So before you later today, there will be a resolution to amend the job description, because we need someone who can have the proper background in marketing, recruiting, working on these types of facilities to be able to engage the community to bring in potential clients. We've also been looking at the budget and looking at the revenue stream for the Adult Day Center. And I actually came up with a proposed sliding fee scale. We have copies for you to review later. And basically, this would allow us to potentially bring in more private pay clients who have not been able to afford the current $80 per day fee that we have for town residents and $90 a day for out-of-town residents. So I think by making some of these changes, we potentially have the opportunity to bring in more clients to the center and to offset some of the costs that the town council and the town of Enfield will be incurring by having the Adult Day Center open. So we're working with a great staff, trying to come up with great programming, come up with a great marketing and outreach strategy, and bring in more residents that could benefit from this service.
And I'd like to add, too, as part of that, we're doing one of our 6 public service announcements that we're having done by the private company. One of them is going to be at the adult daycare. That will be done in July, and we'll put that up at our website. So that's a marketing tool of no cost to us that we're going to be doing. And also as part of that, Damien plus staff, Kasha and Donald Nunes have gone out there to do a house cleaning, as it were, a spring cleaning, to try to spruce it up and identify some areas, perhaps some painting that's going to be done as well to make it a more attractive venue.
Councilor Connor had a question on the job description.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly want to applaud the comments made by the town manager a few months ago when he said that if the town council, in infinite wisdom, were to vote to keep adult daycare open, he would make sure this was the best daycare center possible. And I applaud you for that, Chris. Thank you. And with that in mind, I'm looking at the Town of Enfield job description, which you're revamping for the Adult Day Services Manager. And as I read the changes, it almost looks as though we're lowering the standards by which we're hiring a manager. And let me just read 1 or 2 items to you. Under the minimum qualifications, where it talks about knowledge, skill, and ability, under the previous job description, we said that this person had to have considerable knowledge of the Connecticut Association of Adult Daycare standards and national best practices in dementia and Alzheimer's care. Wonderful. Why are we deleting the word considerable? We're saying now just knowledge I can read a book and have knowledge. I think considerable knowledge means a lot more. And there's another issue, too, under experience and training. Under the current standards, which we're changing, it says under experience and training that this person must be licensed as a registered nurse or licensed practical nurse in the state of Connecticut. At least 3 years of geriatric nursing experience required. We're deleting that. That bothers me, especially that second sentence. At least 3 years of geriatric nursing experience required. It would seem to me that if we're going to have a manager managing an adult daycare center, they should have geriatric nursing experience, and we're deleting that. And there's one other issue. I'm not sure if this is under the consent calendar or not, but we're requesting transfer funds for adult daycare center for $1,000. You could be contracting with Caring Solutions per diem, and we're looking at a cost of $1,000 to do this. Do you know what I'm referring to, Damien? Okay. Is that just for 1 month? The $1,000?
So, Bill, Chris will answer your first question. Go, Dan. Go.
No, I mean, if Damien wants to answer this now, we weren't on these agenda items. But if you want to hear the answers now, well, they're going to be the same. I will only say in regard to the nursing.
I'll acquiesce to whatever the council.
No. I mean, he's here, and maybe he can answer them.
That's fine.
And then we won't have to deal when we come up on consent. He can answer on the $1,000, the transfer. In regard to the nursing, we have to have a skilled nursing person there, and we will. Damien can answer that. It's only because the last director that we had both that we use them in that capacity. Going forward, we want to separate it out because we haven't been able to attract anybody during the pendency. It's been now, and Steve, I was going to have him come up. We've had this listed for how many weeks, Steve?
But what?
Nobody applying.
And nobody's applying. So we thought if we separate it out, we're still going to have nursing under our license, but it will be a separate individual. And this way, we hope we can attract somebody as director. Damien, if you'd like to address why you changed the criteria.
I'm not sure I appreciate that answer.
Yeah.
Just because no one's applying, that doesn't mean we have to lower our standards. That bothers me. And that $1,000, what I'm getting at is this. Under the current standards, this person has to be responsible for nursing care of patrons. We're deleting that, and we're saying almost instead of that, we're going to hire this Caring Solutions to do the per diem nursing and healthcare services. Why we're deleting this from the current program for the adult care manager, and in lieu of that, we're spending money, it appears to me, on hiring Caring Solutions to do the same thing that this adult manager had been doing previously.
Well, the reason being, the manager that had that nursing degree retired and is gone. So by law, we have to have somebody during the pendency of the vacancy. So we're addressing it, and then going forward, because we can't attract anybody with that current job description, we're going to bifurcate it, and we're going to have a nurse. But go ahead, Damon, you answer.
Sure. So there are two models that adult day centers can have. They can have a medical model, which requires a minimum of 4 hours of nursing per day, administered by either a director of the center or a licensed nursing staff. The other model is a recreational model, which does not require any nursing staff on site. For the past year, the adult day center has benefited from having a program manager who is also a licensed nurse. She had been one of our per diem nurses and had worked at the adult day center for about 4 years when she was hired as a program manager. Prior to her hiring, the director of the adult day center was a licensed nurse, and we also had an additional full-time. We had basically two full-time nurses at the adult day center. Looking at other senior facilities in the state, we see that the program manager or the facility director does not have to be a licensed nurse. Many times they will either contract that service out or they'll have nursing staff on site to provide that service. For the past year, we have been working and paying Caring Solutions to provide per diem staff when our health aides are needing to be out for various reasons, or our program manager, who acts as a nurse as well, has been out. So we've had a contract for additional services from Caring Solutions, and that's where that $1,000 comes in. Because of the level of transition we had this year, we're having to make a council transfer to be able to pay for services for fiscal year FY 2019. Moving forward, we want to be able to look and find, we're not saying that we're going to lower our standards and not hire a program manager who is a licensed nurse. If we have someone who applies that has the qualifications and happens to be a licensed nurse, then that person could possibly help us save money by providing and being and acting in both capacities. But we definitely need someone with the skill sets of being able to recruit, outreach in a very heavy way. Right now, we have a census of between 4 and 6 people per day. And right now, we have staffing in the facility for at least 21 clients. So we need someone who has the ability and the experience in geriatric services, but obviously being able to do the proper outreach so that we can increase our clientele.
And I hear you say, Damien, that there is currently an acting adult daycare service manager.
Our acting day service manager is actually our former social worker who has over 10 years of geriatric experience, and she is the program manager for adult and community services for social services, and she is acting in this capacity for the next month.
And the qualifications of the new job description, she would fulfill those qualifications. Is that right? The new qualifications.
She would, correct.
So, do we write this job description for her?
We did not. Actually, we're going to be losing our staff member, Jessica Russell, who has been an invaluable member of the social services team for over the past 4 years. She's actually going to be working for the public school system as a social worker at one of the schools. So this is basically looking at the candidate pool, seeing that we need, because of the transition that we're having in the department as well as at the center, we need to find qualified candidates, and we need to be able to increase the candidate pool. And if you look closely at the original job descriptions, it actually states that the person that applies and gets the job must be a licensed nurse. So what we're doing is we're not saying they don't have to be, but we want to be able to open it up to people that may have the qualifications but are not licensed nurses.
Thank you, Damien. I do have my concerns, but thank you for your answers, and thank you, Mr. Town Manager.
You're welcome. As you know, it's a difficult situation. I mean, we have spiraling attendance there. We didn't increase the budget, but we were given the charge to try to do the best we can, and everybody is doing that to the best of their ability. We want it to succeed, but obviously we are facing strong headwinds, and even those programs we're talking with, they are losing clients, even though they have outreach and they have busing and they have sliding scale. So we sort of took this on, and we're taking on water, and we're trying to bail out as quick as we can, but we are doing it with the best of intentions. We're working hard. I thank Damien, Jason, and Kasha, and anybody who has any ideas or they think we could do better or anything innovative, including you, Bill, please let us know. We'd be open to hear any suggestions.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for this courtesy. I appreciate it.
Councilor Sferrazza, and then again, we got to move forward.
We're staffed for 21. We have 4 to 6 residents a day. How many of those are Enfield residents?
We have, on average, 3 to 4 are Enfield residents. So we have 1 or 2 that are non-residents.
Okay, and not to belabor the point, but what Mr. Kiner was saying, basically, we have a job description in place that required you to have a nursing background. No one's applying for that. So now if you apply and you don't have the nursing background, but you have the other qualifications, you can get the job, and we will still go out and have a nursing person in there.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And then just to close this, I appreciate the sliding scale, but just remind people, we went away from the sliding scale because we were losing, or we were $500,000 in a hole last year. I'm not sure what our deficit is currently for this, but again, I think that's part of it, is that, again, we can't be running a deficit where we could be using that money to, again, give programs to keep people in their homes, which is what Medicare is doing. We could use some of that money to help. We know there's residents who need we have the blight issue where someone may be battling cancer, they can't mow their lawn. It'd be great to be able to have some money we could subsidize a local landscaper to go out and take care of that lawn. I mean, I think it's just, unfortunately, the nature of the market has changed.
I would just like to say that nothing has changed
Right.
since the debate the council had during the budget, except the extraordinary effort staff is making to make a go of it.
Yeah. Anything else? Sorry, Damon, go ahead.
Nope, nothing else.
Thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chris, anything else?
Absent any other questions, I'm done.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Yeah, Chris, I appreciate what you just said about the staff is working really hard, but I think the staff has always worked really hard. I really don't want anyone to have any misconception that there was not an effort constantly when Pam was here, when Dawn was here, when everybody was here.
No, and I didn't mean to belittle them. The only point is,
no,
I
but
think...
I just want
no, but
the
my only
audience
point was,
to know.
I think, for a period of time, there was a thought that it was going to be closed. So some of those efforts weren't made in the same manner that we're doing because they presumed we were going to discontinue the service and go elsewhere. So I'm saying we just redoubled our efforts once the council voted, or actually didn't vote to close it. So we are trying harder than ever and digging in to do it. But I agree with you. I think most of the reasons why we don't have people there are no different than the reasons they don't have them in any of the other facilities in Connecticut. And again, every night I go home from these meetings and see the ads, keep mom and dad at home. And that's what the federal and state money is doing, and we're up against that. But we'll do our best so that when we look at this in the next budget, nobody can say we didn't make our best efforts.
Sorry, Chris, one last question before we move. If this isn't a part, I apologize, but I was down in there when we were doing a clean sweep. Any update at 98 Prospect Street? I mean, Kelly Fredette's doing a great job in that corner of Prospect Street. It'd be great to know at some point we clean up that little, I don't know if there's anything up with where we are at.
We're working towards that. Nelson's working with them towards a proposed memo of understanding and other issues, so that is very active, and we're pursuing it as we speak.
Yes, exactly. Councilor Bosco.
We're going to be fighting this issue or trying to figure out this issue from now until we run out of money. Out of all this, I had a solution that would have took care of this problem. Each one of you knew what it was, and no one wanted to act on it. And we're in the problems we have today because no one wanted to act on it. And it's a real shame that these people, we're going through what we got for a program that is failing. We're not going to be able to offer the right services to the people. And it's really sad here that we're arguing over stuff like this today when there was a pure common sense alternative that would have took care of more people instead of playing these games we're playing right now. This program, I don't think no matter what we do will ever succeed other than draining the budget and getting it just, like I said, everyone here who knows me knows what I'm talking about. This could have been taken care of. And it's just a shame that I wasn't here to vote on the budget. And now everyone puts their heads down, but they all know what I was saying was correct. And we're going to be playing with this little devil here until we finally get the nerve to do what we need to do and take care of the elderly that we need to take care of take care of the taxpayers that we need to take care of, and watch our own budget. And it's just sad that we're arguing about this stuff.
Moving on to item 10, Town Attorney Report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council. I have no formal report.
Any questions for the Town Attorney? All set, thank you. Moving on to item 11, Report of Special Committees. Anyone have any report of special committees? No? No?
Hold mine till later.
Later?
Yes.
Item 12, moving on to old business. Item 12, items A, appointments 1 and 2, we have none. Moving on to page 2, under old business, appointments 3 through 10, we have none. Do I have a motion to remove item 11 from the table?
So moved.
By Councilor Muller, second by Councilor Crisati. This will be a reappointment for the Inland and Wetlands Watercourse Agency. Do I have a nomination? Deputy Mayor Suzak?
Nominate Robert Shagnon.
Nomination been made. Second by Councilor Muller. Do I have a motion to close nominations? By Councilor Sferrazza, seconded by Councilor Denny. By show of hands, all those in favor of closing nominations? Opposed, abstentions? We have 9 in favor, 0 against. Any discussion on the main motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller. Counselor Sferrazza. Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Robert Shagnon.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco. Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
Robert Shagnon.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Items 12 through 15 on page 2 remain on the table. Moving on top of page 3, appointments by the town manager, 1 through 14. None. Moving over to page 4, items 15 and 16 for the town manager remain on the table. Item C, appointments by P&Z Commission appointed, council approved, we have none. Excuse me, item D, discussion of school roofs remain tabled. New business, item A, consent agenda, there is none. Item B, under new business, town council appointments, there are none. Item C, under new business, town manager appointed, there are none. Item D, appointments P&Z appointed, council approved, again, there are none. Item E, under new business, resolution to approve a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with IAEP local number R1-717 NAGE SEIU union. One, I will read the motion in a second. We don't need a motion in new business to come off the table, right, Suzanne?
No.
No.
Excuse me?
We don't need a motion, no?
No.
Okay. One second, I'll read the resolution. Resolved that the Enfield Town Council does hereby approve the 3-year collective bargaining agreement between the town of Enfield and the IAEP local number R1-717 NAGE SEIU paramedics and EMTs union dated July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2021, prepared on June 12, 2019 by Steve Belinda. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crisati. Any questions or discussions? I just want to commend our EMS union for also giving, again, a 0 in their negotiation, along with all the other unions in town and our non-union employees as well. So again, as we faced, everyone forgets 2 years ago, we were faced with a $10 million cut from the state of Connecticut. I think we had a $7 million deficit at the time. And to avoid, we took 2 years to negotiate these contracts. But again, I want to congratulate EMS for doing the right thing by the taxpayers, as our other unions have. Again, they deserve credit for being part of the solution, where again, we did not send out a supplemental tax bill when many towns had to when they got their budgets cut. So we got another union stepping up to the plate and doing what is right for the taxpayers of the town of Enfield, and I congratulate the EMS union. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, 10 against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item F, resolution and under new business, accepting mortgage payoff offer from United Bank. Sorry, 1 second, where's my resolution? Now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council does hereby accept Union Bank offer of $1,500 in exchange for a lease of the community development mortgage at 49 North Street, prepared on June 13, 2019 by the Town Attorney's Office. By Councilor Muller, by Councilor Denny. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item 14, items for discussion. Items A, 1, and 2 on the consent agenda. Request for transfer of funds to the Adult Day Center of $1,000 and resolving resolution revising the Adult Day Service Manager's job description, which Damian and Chris just explained. Do we have any further questions? By a show of hands, all those in favor of approving items A, 1, and 2? Those opposed? We have 9 in favor, 0 against for the consent agenda and the 14 items A, 1, and 2. That's good, Suzanne, right?
It's fine.
Perfect, okay. Item B, 1 and 2 remain on the table, just simply resignations under items of discussion. Moving to item C, Town Manager appointed, Council approved. We have none. Item D, P and Z Commission appointed, Council approved. We have none. We move to item 15, miscellaneous. Item E. Sorry, 1 second, I'll read it. Item E, excuse me, I apologize, under miscellaneous, request for transfer of funds for emergency medical services of $15,000. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. 2 emergency medical services, other equipment of $15,000 from emergency medical services, miscellaneous contributions of $15,000. Certified that the above stated funds were available on June 19, 2019 by John Wilcox, the Director of Finance, approved by Christopher Bronson on 6/27/2019. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crisati. Aaron, I know you've been, I think it would be, if you don't mind, can we invite Aaron? She's been waiting patiently. I think it's a good thing for her to talk to, if you're okay.
Certainly.
Yep.
She's young. She has a lot of time.
Well, she's, again, I like, with folks who sit in the audience, I like giving a chance to speak.
Well, wait till you get to the microphone. Share the good news.
Those mics that we didn't know we purchased. Go ahead, Aaron.
This was a $15,000 donation made from the Newman's Own Foundation in memory of somebody that we had taken care of. He was also a EMT in his past life, so she wanted to donate some funds to us to purchase a piece of equipment that could benefit our department and the people that we serve. So we, reviewed all of our equipment, and we're going to use this $15,000 to purchase a new stretcher to replace an old stretcher that is not power, is a manual stretcher.
Any questions for Aaron? Being very humble, but it's great to get recognized from a donation of your staff's services. So this is a really big idea. I'm glad you were willing to come up and talk about it.
Thank you.
Councilor Denny.
So the money went into the general fund, and that's why we're transferring the money? John?
John, you awake?
Look alive, John. Look alive.
Well, if she had a donation, I don't know why we're transferring funds, so it must have went to you first.
Normally, the general funds take everything, and then we have to, as Carl well knows, for dogs and other things, then we have to appropriate it to the.
Answer, John.
Typically,
now you're going to regret asking, Ed.
yes, you are. You're going to get the accounting answer.
Well, George is here, so I want to make sure.
When these, we have to budget all of our expenditures that we make. So, even though a donation was made to be to be spent on by the EMS, it was never appropriated. So that's the purpose of this transfer, is to make sure that there are funds that she can spend against.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. And Aaron, again, congratulations to you and your staff. It's great to be recognized by someone who recognizes your service.
And Mike, I would just like to commend Erin for
Right.
working with this individual and making this possible. It wasn't as simple as it appears, and she did a really wonderful job doing that, and also helping to recognize the memory of somebody that was very happy with the services, as many people are with Enfield EMS. And I would just like to ask a consensus for us to prepare a letter to send to Newman's, thanking them for this on behalf of the mayor and the council.
Yes, that's easy. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you hanging in there. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Counselor Muller.
4.
Counselor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Counselor Ungary.
4.
Counselor Bosco.
4.
Counselor Crisati.
4.
Counselor Denny.
4.
Counselor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on, under miscellaneous, item F, request for transfer of funds for the Henry Barnard roof of $23,000. Resolved that in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. From the BOE sinking fund unallocated contingency at $23,000. 2, the BOE sinking unallocated transfers capital, $23,000. From reserve grant funding, Henry Barnard Roof of $51,663. Revenue grant fund projects, $23,000. 2, grant Barnard School Roof Construction Services of $74,663. Certified that the above funds are available on June 25th, 2019 by John Wilcox, the Director of Finance, approved by Christopher Bromson, the Town Manager, on 6/27/2019. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Denny. So anyone, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Okay, with this transfer, does this bring us up to the $850,000? It's going to have to come up because we're going to have a few things to discuss.
This transfer would bring us up to just under $850,000.
I got
to be spent.
$849,663.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so we're doing the Henry Barnard roof. We're doing it in phases as we have to do because of the referendum limit. The bid came in for the phase 2 of $861,540. I don't have enough money to proceed. I'd like to know if I can amend this motion to get the extra money that's required to at least do the second phase. We'll have 3 phases for the Henry Barnard roof. The last phase will be very small and very expensive.
Yes, at the time I prepared this transfer, I was looking into an answer on the definition of the charter requires that any appropriation in excess of 0.0002 of the grand list be referred to referendum. The definition of the grand list is what we had always used the amount that Della has submitted to the Office of Policy Management in January. Looking on the OPM website, the definition is the taxable and non-taxable. The grand list is the list of taxable and non-taxable property in the town. When I add that amount into it, we can add approximately another $70-some thousand into this to this appropriation.
Okay.
How much are you asking? You're not making an amendment yet. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay, I can make an amendment.
No,
now.
go ahead, sorry, I thought
But
you
you
were-
know what?
yeah.
I guess for me, couldn't figure out where that $70,000 was coming from. So basically, that's coming from the fact that we've never in the past looked at our non-taxable.
That's correct.
Okay. This is not a way to run a business, and this is a business. Okay.
Say that again, I didn't hear you.
Basically, we've been looking at that 0.02% of our grand list. We've been only looking at taxable, but according to John, when he looked up the definition of what we should be looking at, it's taxable and non-taxable. Like, we have state properties that aren't taxable, we get pilot money. So there's an extra.
Got all that. I didn't understand what your last comment was. I didn't hear your last
Oh,
comment.
okay. So my comment was that basically, we've been looking at a number, and I've been been a little irritated today. I've been calling it the arbitrary number.
So I got a question. Am I
Sure.
out of-
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So my question is, so we're gonna only add $70,000? Is that all he can add according to the
Correct.
charter?
Yes,
Yeah,
Ed.
amend the amendment. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, he was asking the question, correct.
Correct.
And that's it? But we're not gonna be in violation of any charter then, without going to referendum?
Right.
if you
That's
add the
correct.
70.
Well,
So
yes, it would
how
be-
much of the roof are we going to get from 70,000?
Well, first of all, Ed, I'm going to actually get to do Phase 2 because right now I'm $11,000 shy of Phase 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
can I,
And to
just-
finish the roof, it's $250,000.
Well, I understand that, but
So the way the charter, our bond council looks at this, the roof is one project, whether we break it down into pieces or not. So I can only appropriate whatever this .002 of the grand list is in any one fiscal year. In fiscal year 2019, last August, we appropriated approximately $506,000. Okay, so that brought us up. That was what we needed to do the first phase. So I can only appropriate up to approximately $660,000 now. Okay. It was based on the old calculation, it was about 580,000. So the difference between the 660,000 and the 506,000 that we previously appropriated is 154,000. Okay? Of that, 70% will be funded by the state and 30% will be funded by the town. Okay? So this original, as I said, I got my answer on this after consultation with the town attorney after these transfers had to be submitted. So I wanted to, I didn't have time to actually change it for what we submitted. So if you would, we could increase this from a total appropriation of $74,000 to about $154,000, which would get Donna the amount that we needed to do the full phase 2 of the project.
And I'd like to explain why, for me, this is important, because without us being able to increase this and without us being able to approve this, tomorrow we're going to be looking for, John and Chris to give us a PO so that we can start this roof, like the 15th of July. If we don't get these things clear and we can't get a PO, we can't start, and we're going to lose the whole summer. And we've been working since February to get to this point.
So you want to make the amendment, or you want to, so you have other
I'm
items? Go ahead.
ready to make an amendment to
Go right
the,
ahead. So you make, John, let's just make sure the number, what number can she make before she makes it?
How about, should I just,
the thing is this is going to have an impact to the budget, right? Or I take it from the sinking fund. I guess that's what I'm looking for guidance from.
I would recommend taking this from the sinking fund.
Okay.
There are funds available. The amount that we would need would increase from 23,000 to 47,000.
Okay. And
Okay, so on that first line,
right.
on the
And this
from
means
and
we're going to be right on the line for this. I mean, everybody say their prayers that they don't find anything when we open up this roof, because, we'll have to come back to the council and ask for more money. I want everybody to really understand how difficult this is under the constraints that we have.
well, you can't
Go ahead, Ed. Yeah.
you
Go
can't
ahead.
come back to us if you're going to violate the charter for more money.
No.
We're going to find it.
No. Well, there's still a little bit more. I only need 47 to get to this place. There is more left.
So
remember, that amount is per year.
Right.
Okay,
Per year.
per fiscal year.
Right.
So the FY20, we had built this, the appropriation for the second half into the FY20 budget, and that was based on the $580,000 number. So if need be, we could add to that number as well.
And I would just like to say, and I understand Donna's frustration, she has worked very hard, so has facilities, to try to accomplish an important task here. The problem, not the problem, but the constraint is the charter. And it's the Bible by which we have to follow. And I was the staff liaison in 2014 when there was a Charter Revision Commission. They looked specifically at this, and to make sure my memory was valid, I talked to Earl Preventure, who was on it, and Lou Fiore today, and there was an amendment to increase it from the .002, which changes each year, 500 and something to 600, to say, let's make it $1 million. Charter Revision voted against it because there were people on the commission and people in the public who said, no, we want to vote on the whole budget. So it was a compromise to say, well, this will be a check and balance. We'll leave it at this level. So anything over that on the individual projects, let the voters decide. So that is the rub there. That is the balancing. And it's something that we have to live within. Or you go to referendum and get a bigger pot of money and do these roofs at once in a much more efficient manner like we've done the roads project. So that's the dichotomy.
Right. Well, the problem with school roofs is that you have to have the roof designed to get your grant money. We can't properly go to a referendum for school roofs because you're going to be referendum one roof at a time, and it's just not an efficient way to do it. I mean, we are, guaranteed the 70%, but until you have the paperwork, you can't state it in a referendum question. And as Joey reminded us a million times, the citizens turned down this referendum. That was $40 million. It was a 10-year plan. It would have fixed the roofs. It would have put security in the buildings. I mean, these are things that people have to understand. Saying no to referendums has consequences. And when you say no, it doesn't mean the problem goes away. It means it has to be solved a different way. And this is how we're solving it. And it is not pretty.
It's not easy. And what we're doing, I've talked to John and Maria, we're going to talk to bond council to see what other communities have done in order to do a referendum if we were to limit it to roofs so that schools would be eligible, work within a formula that would allow us to overcome the obstacle you just outlined so that we would be able to get a pool of money and do it in an efficient manner while still getting back the reimbursement from the state.
And let's look at windows with it, because we get those.
That's the council prerogative, but we're going to try to do that moving forward, and we'll report to you.
Before we make an amendment, I want to be clear on something. Okay, so what is in the sinking fund? Again, so this is all coming from the sinking fund we already have established, right?
Just the town share.
Right, so what is the max? You were saying we're going to do 47, but since we only have one meeting in the rest of the summer, and the roofs start in 15, we're not going to be meeting till August. So two numbers, what's the max we can allocate this year, be within the charter, and do we have that in the sinking fund? So is it, you know what I mean? So if it's not 23 to 47, what would be that number? So again, if in case you do run into overrides, and we don't meet till August, we're not going to slow down the project.
We have $101,000 left in the Board of Education sinking fund. This would use $47,000 of that. We are adding for the fiscal year 20 budget $150,000.
So what do you need? So what do we need now? So in case there's an overrun that stays within the limit of the charter, is it 47 or is it something a little greater?
Well, this transfer was specifically for fiscal year 19.
Okay.
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 So
Perfect.
we did not do a so this is the max that we can do.
Got it for 19. Sorry, thank you. That's where I was getting confused. Perfect. So is there amendment to change 23,000 from Board of Sinking Fund contingency to $47,000?
Yes, I make that motion to amend and then we have to.
Yeah, so it'll be also transfer also down, I'll do.
To
So
74.
it's from Board Sinking allocation contingency of 23,000 to 47. From, then it'll go to, do you already have it? All right, here we go. All right, so let me just read it. Here's the amendment. From BOE sinking unallocated contingency, going from 23,000 to 47, to BOE sinking unallocated transfer of capital from 23,000 to 47, from revenue grant funded projects Barnard School roof, changing from 51,663 to 107,000, from revenue grant fund projects, from capital fund transfers in 23,000 to 47,000, to grant Barnard School roof construction services of $154,000 as amended tonight. There's the amendment, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak. Any questions on the amendment to the motion? Hearing none, by a show of hands, all those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Abstentions? 9 in favor, 0 against. Now the main motion as just amended. Any further questions for Jonathan? Donna, you all set?
I must say, thank you, and thank you for doing the research on getting that, because that helps a little bit, because I did look at everything, and every single elementary school roof is going to be, in tough shape on these.
Agree. Thank you, sir, and thank the town attorney for stepping up on this today. So we
Stay,
appreciate
John,
it.
stay, because South River Bridge is next, so.
Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, and against, no abstentions.
All right. Good job, sir. You staying there?
Staying for the next 2.
See, you made me lose my place. All these amendments. Okay, item G, request to transfer of funds for the South River Street Bridge, $580,971. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfers hereby made. From general fund unallocated contingency of $116,194 to general fund unallocated transfer to capital of $116,194. From revenue grant funded projects, general fund transfer in of $116,194. From revenue grant funded projects, South River Street Bridge grant of $464,777. To South River Street Bridge, other professional fees of $40,000, and also to South River Street Bridge construction services, $540,971. Certified the above stated funds are available on June 15, 2019 by John Wilcox, the Director of Finance, approved by Christopher Bromson, the Town Manager, on June 27, 2019. By Councilor Muller, second by Councilor Crisati. This is, John, I mean, this is the really, so this is the, I think, just to be clear in the charter, why we're paying as we go here.
John can
go
give a
ahead.
quick blurb. It's similar to the last item.
Okay. We have the same issue with the charter referendum limits. Okay, so we set aside money on an annual basis in order to get up to the amount that we needed. Now, the original estimated cost on the South River Street Bridge was about $1,345,000, okay? And we had money, we had done it the same way and set aside money in order to do that. The recent review and changes to the project have pushed that cost up to estimated about $3.3 million. Obviously, that's a little tougher to get up to. However, if we appropriate these funds tonight, that'll be for the fiscal year 2019, okay? We will have to do another appropriation in fiscal year 20. We will also have to do another one, and we'll probably put this one in the 2021 budget. And then a final one would be in the 2022 budget, okay? My preliminary calculations indicate that we would need about $35,000 in fiscal year using the new appropriation amounts for the funding. We'll know, I think, a little bit better what the total cost of that is when it goes out that far. That money will be available on July 1st, 2021, which is fiscal year 22. And according to John Cabibbo, the current estimate is that project will start sometime in 2021. That could be in May 2021, but we would have most of the funding set aside at that point for that.
And I would like to thank John for being a hawk and seeing this so that we didn't, down the road come ready for the bridge and we were short $1 million. So his vigilance is appreciated. And I will just tell you, this is the way Enfield always did it. When I go back 30 years, it's a very fiscally conservative community. They call it pay as you go. We didn't do a lot of referendums. We didn't do leasing. We didn't do sinking funds, and it limited us. So in a couple areas, we've evolved and we've been a little more creative. But overall, this is the way it used to be done. That's perfectly consistent with the charter that you save the money. When you have enough, you do the project. Unfortunately, as Donna has said, when all of a sudden you get 12 or 15 roofs that all come due at once, you just can't save up enough each year to do it in your budget. So it's a challenge. So as I said, we're looking at that for the long range. But thank you, John, for looking at this and bringing it forward before the end of the year.
Councilor Denny.
The total cost for the town is what you're giving us?
That is the total cost of the project itself.
Now, how much are we going to get reimbursed from the state? Anything?
Currently, it is estimated that the state is going to pay 80% of it, but we have to.
We have to have the money.
We have to set aside enough to. We write the check for the whole amount, and then we get reimbursed from the state. So I have to have a budget there to write that check against.
I just wanted the public to know all that. Thank you.
I mean, you've turned finance interesting, John.
It's always been that way, guys. It's always been that way.
Again, thank you. I know, I mean, it does get dry when we're talking about numbers, and again, this is important because you're walking through detail so people understand.
Yeah.
Again, we are looking down the road, we have plans, and we're trying to save money to do it. I mean, and unfortunately, as the deputy mayor said, it turns what should be a one-phase project into a three-phase project with a roof. And unfortunately, guess what? The more phase you have, the higher the cost goes up.
Right.
I mean, unfortunately, it's A plus B equals C. Anyone else have any questions? Deputy Mayor Suzak.
I just have one comment that, we have these sinking funds, and funding them, once you put a roof on a school, you're going to get 25, 30 years out of this roof. You don't have to put a lot of money in, and it's really, it's beneficial to put away a little bit every year so that we're not having to do, as John's pointing out, that we have to fund that project up to the referendum limit every year for the next 4 years, and that's a big commitment on us because what is that, about $500,000?
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner. There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item number H, request for transfer of funds for the Stowe Early Learning Center of $99,000 is resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter. The following transfer is hereby made. From general fund revenue unappropriated fund balance of $99,000 to non-departmental charges transfer to capital of $99,000. From capital and non-recurrent fund revenue of fiscal year 2020, to capital and non-recurring fund town parking lot rep construction-related services of $99,000. Certified the above stated funds are available on June 25th, 2019 by John Wilcox, the Director of Finance, approved by Christopher Bronson on June 27th, 2019. By Councilor Denny, seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak.
Briefly, as we previously stated, because the superintendent of schools graciously absorbed $100,000 in busing that we had budgeted for Stowe and has contracted with the bus company to pay for that so that we would be able to spend that money towards improvements in the property. And this is a $99,000 improvement I spoke of earlier, that Donald Nunes, we have an on-call contractor that will commence tomorrow to start adding the additional parking spaces of about, I think, a total of 103. But this is the paved portion in front of the school.
Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item I, under miscellaneous, request to transfer funds from the fixed bus grant of $224,000. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfer is hereby made. 2, fixed bus route grant, vehicles and salaries, $216,000 and $8,000. From Magic Carpet, DOT fixed route bus grant of $224,000, certified the above funds are available on July 1, 2019 by John Wilcox, Director of Finance. Approved by Christopher Bronson on 6/27/2019. Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crissati. I think good news, right?
It's excellent news. It's the state coming through with 2 buses that weren't previously slated, and Damien is here, but they're 2 new buses in addition to the one we previously, 1 earlier or 2 earlier in the year. We got 1 other, That was my recollection. These are two that they then came forward and said, we're going to fund 2 more new ones for you, so it's great.
Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak. 4. Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco. Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 8 in favor, 1 against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item J, no miscellaneous. Request transfer funds from school security of $250,000. Resolved in accordance with Chapter 6, Section 8F of the Town Charter, the following transfers hereby made. Two school security, overtime and Medicare, $246,427. $3,573 from general fund revenue, appropriated fund balance of $250,000. Certified that the above stated funds are available at June 26, 2019 by John Wilcox, Director of Finance. Approved by Christopher Bronson on June 27, 2019. By Councilor Muller. By Councilor Crisati. Any discussion from anyone, or do you want to bring the chief up or no?
Chief is here to answer any questions within the parameters that we can, due to the fact that this is protected material under basically the exemption of school security under the state statute, but
So I just want.
Councilor Sferrazza.
So I just want to say, like the manager said, this was a subject in executive session for the School Security Board and council representatives, and I can't discuss the executive session, but I can tell you all that the council is all fully informed of this, as well as the School Security Committee.
I don't know, Chief, your call, anything you want to say or no? I don't
No,
want to, you've been sitting around.
that's it. There, at a recent meeting of the Joint Town Board of Ed Working Group, a discussion was initiated about levels of security and where we were and where else we might want to go. So at the instruction of that working group, I generated a number based on some calculations, and that's the number that is before you.
You know, anything I'll say, Chris, right after we vote, this goes to the Board Ed for their vote.
it does. We have it prepared to go to them to accept the enhanced, we can say that it's enhanced school security being provided by the Enfield Police Department.
Great.
And as I believe all of you know,
Starting the school year this August.
there's no effort to be coy here. It's just the identification of what we would do by definition identifies what is not.
And I think the public has the right to know and should know it's about $250,000, which would be additional to what we allocated in the budget. It's not going to go into police overtime. It's going to go into a separate school fund, so it's clearly identified. So we have transparency, although Gina hates the word. She's not here. I'll use it. And it's to enhance school security. It's an ongoing effort, a continuing effort to ensure the safety of our students in all the schools. We'll be looking at it throughout the year. There may be adjustments. The committee will continue to work, get input from the police. There may be additions or changes to it next year, but this is something the board, the council, and the committee felt important to get in place this fall, not due to any specific threat, but just due to the general nature of where we are today.
Thank you for hanging around.
Yes, sir.
I have one comment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is long overdue. I am glad to see that, you know, JFK and the high school is still maintain their officers at those buildings, and JFK might need another one also.
And just for the record, this is a joint Board of Ed, Town Council Committee, along with our police force and other members of our town and school administration. So this is a joint acting committee, for the record. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco is out. Councilor Crisati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 8 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Thank you for sorry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you both for hanging out. Appreciate it. Moving on to item K. Resolution authorizing the town manager to sign an agreement with Century 21 All Points Realty. Whereas the town desires to enter an agreement with Century 21 All Points Realty for the real estate agency services, and whereas the term of the agreement shall commence on the date set forth in the agreement and shall continue, for the period set forth in the request for qualifications proposals referenced in the agreement. Now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council authorizes the town manager to sign the agreement with Century 21 All Points Realty in the name and behalf of the town of Enfield, subject to review and approval by the town attorney, prepared by Nelson I'm going to ruin his last name, Tereso, excuse me, Nelson, apologize, Deputy Director of Economic and Community Development, prepared on June 21st, 2019. By Councilor Muller. Second by Councilor Crissati. I don't know, Nelson, you want to, this is, I think, a really big deal for the town, in my opinion, so if you have a couple. I apologize for ruining your last name, Nelson.
For the record, it's Nelson Tereso. Good evening, Town Council. A couple months back in my office, we solicited a RFP for real estate agency services. We went through the process. We received 3 proposals. Ultimately, we selected All Points Realty, Century 21. They provided the most competitive proposal. They were the only agency to provide marketing, leasing, and auctioning services, and they also provided the best commission rates. So at this time, we're going to be moving forward to authorizing our town manager to execute the contract. At our next town council meeting, I plan on presenting 4 to 5 residential parcels for town council approval in order to seek Chris's authorization to convey these parcels so we can begin the marketing process. We've actually already done a comparative market analysis for these 4 or 5 parcels, so we're ready to go. Century 21 is ready to go as well.
That's great. Any questions? And I think this is exciting because, again, we've talked about blight, we've talked about all the things we've done over the last 2 years, and now actually we're implementing that where these properties, unfortunately, have, for whatever reason, have sat for a while and people can think of them off the top of their head.
Correct.
We are moving forward to get them back on the tax rolls.
Yes, yes, we are.
I mean, I think this is a big deal, and I appreciate your office running with this, and we look forward to working with All Points.
Thank you.
I think this is a big deal, in my opinion. Any other questions? And again, apologize, Nelson, for ruining your name.
No problem.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, and no abstentions.
Moving on to item L, resolution creating the Town of Enfield Farmland Preservation Sinking Fund. Whereas the Connecticut General Statute, Section 7-148C, 2K empowers municipalities to create sinking funds which monies therefore do not lapse at the end of the municipal fiscal end of the municipal fiscal year, and whereas funds for the preservation of farmlands has been appropriated in a capital non-reoccurring fund, whereas the Town of Enfield desires to establish a sinking fund for the purpose of accumulating the financial resources to preserve farmland within the town, now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council does hereby create the Farmland Preservation Sinking Fund, otherwise known as the fund, and be it further resolved, and that said fund shall be solely dedicated to obtaining and preserving farmland. Be it further resolved that any farmland preservation funds that have been previously appropriated to the capital non-occurring fund shall be transferred to the Farmland Preservation Sinking Fund. Prepared on June 25th, 2019, by the Director of Finance, John Wilcox.
So moved.
By Councilor Denny.
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Suzak. I mean, go ahead, I know it's.
I just have a question. Is this specifically for the monies that the town, that is donated to the town from town peoples, or is this for the money that's in the CIP?
That would be for all money in the CIP,
Because we did have monies donated.
which I believe were added to the funds that were appropriated.
They were. Okay. Do we have verification of that, please?
Yep.
Some, not today, but just, because it's like, when people, actually write a check for something, you really want to make sure it goes to where it's supposed to go. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, John. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Moving on to item N, item M under miscellaneous, resolution creating the Town of Enfield Park and Recreation Area Sinking Fund. Whereas the Connecticut General Statute 7-148C 2K empowers municipalities to create sinking funds, which monies therefore do not lapse at the end of the municipal fiscal year. Whereas the Town of Enfield desires to establish a sinking fund for the purpose of accumulating financial resources to address the capital needs of town-owned parks and recreation areas, including athletic fields. Now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council does hereby create the Park and Recreation Area Sinking Fund, otherwise known as fund, and be it further resolved that revenues generated from the rental of athletic fields shall be deposited into the fund. Be it further resolved that the fund shall be solely dedicated to addressing the capital needs of all town-owned parks and recreation areas, including athletic fields. It's prepared on June 25th, 2019 by the Director of Finance. By Councilor Muller.
Second.
By Councilor Crissati. I mean, it's pretty self-extant, I mean.
This is something that the council wanted when we did the implementation of the rates. And again, I've had discussions with various council members. We will be reviewing in December. We'll give an accounting of how much money we've raised, and also there will be some tweaking now that we'll have a whole season under our belt. But overall, I think it's been successful, and it's been good for the fields, according to Mark Garr. So this is something the council wanted us to follow up on, and again, designate, so that if we needed a gazebo or we needed a basketball court, that funding that we're raising from renting the fields would be used for those purposes.
Councilor Bosco.
And that was the exact intent of when we started charging for the field use. Ed and Donna, we all sat down and tried to come up with something, because we have a lot of monies that we need to spend on fields, and instead of taking it out of the general fund, we'll use the money from there, and that's going to take care of it. And I think it's a more responsible way, especially when we had out-of-towners using our fields for nothing. We had people using them for a business for nothing. So at least now we recoup a little bit of money, and that money will go into a fund, and that fund will be used just for the fields. So I'm definitely going to be supporting this, and we worked pretty hard on that. There were a few things that I think in committee we had a misunderstanding, and that's what Chris is talking about, where we need to tweak it. But
So
other
the
than
only
that,
question, we have a response from Enfield Soccer. Will you guys be meeting before September on some of those misunderstandings?
you know what, I would love to. Chris is saying that we got to do it in December, but
No, I think the council, if we want to look at things earlier, we can. We had just said in it that we would look at this in December. We wrote that into the last ideation, so we would not forget, and we'd have a review every year. But that's just a date that was just a trigger, was December. If we want to look at it in the fall, we certainly can.
I think it'd have to be in
well, I think we
August.
should probably look at it as soon as possible, because we have one organization that already.
Right. I think your committee would have to talk
can
at
vote
some
on something
point,
in
so we
August.
can
Yeah.
agree and then bring it to leadership and put it on for August 1st if you're so inclined.
Yeah, so if you can set something up.
We
Thank you.
shall.
All right. Thank you, sir. Anything else? Roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco. 4. Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item N, resolution ratifying and adopting amendments to the Town Code, Chapter 14, 14-171 through 14-187, inclusive property maintenance ordinance. Whereas throughout various times in 2018, the Town Council received public input on the property maintenance ordinance, otherwise known as ordinance. Whereas on October 1, 2018, and December 17, 2018, the Town Council held public hearings regarding recommended amendments to the ordinance. Whereas on December 17, 2018, the Town Council adopted recommended amendments to the ordinance. Whereas the ordinance with all the intended revisions was timely published. Whereas due to a clerical error, some language not intended to be changed was omitted from publication. Now therefore be it resolved, the Enfield Town Council hereby ratifies, adopts the corrected amendments to Chapter 14, Sections 14-171 through 14-187, inclusive of the Town Code, prepared on June 18, 2019 by the Town Attorney's Office. By Councilor Muller, seconded by Councilor Crissati.
I will just say this was something we've talked to leadership and we supplied it to you in the packet. It was just that from passage to publication, some things were lost in translation, grammatical. This is housekeeping to correct those clerical errors.
Any questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
4.
Councilor Crissati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
There's 9 in favor, none against, no abstentions.
Item O, which was added by special resolution, special vote for the Lone Star Energy. Now therefore be it resolved, I, the undersigned beneficial account owner, otherwise known as owner, hereby appoint Lodestar Energy, LLC, a Connecticut limited liability company, and an entity owned or managed by Lodestar Energy, LLC, as my authorized representative to act on my behalf with regard to any submissions for the beneficial accounts to the virtual net metering program in Connecticut in connection with the construction and operation of electric generation facility located in the owner's service territory as defined below, or equivalent property. Owner reserves the right to cancel this appointment at any time for any reason without further obligation. Authorized representative of Lodestar Energy LLC, 6 Ridbury Road, at Avon, Connecticut, 06001. JMCEL@lodestarenergy.com, 860-881-077. Do I have a motion? Got Counselor Bosco, seconded by Counselor Denny. I have amendment, if I could. So, again, just because when we do contracts at work, I'm not a lawyer. The word owner should be, wherever the word owner is, should be the town of Enfield.
That's correct.
So I would like to make an amendment to replace the word owner in the amendment with the town of Enfield. Because again, as much as owner is good, I like to be exact when it comes to who the owner is. Is that okay?
That's, a town of Enfield would be put in there under owner. That's
Right.
the intention of it.
Exactly. I mean, we want to make sure who the owner is, and I want to make sure it's the town of Enfield.
Right.
So I have an amendment to change the word owner to town of Enfield.
So moved.
By Deputy Mayor Suzak.
You
Do I have a
don't,
second? Maria?
no, you don't need to change it because it's like saying, for example, who's the one authorized to sign? It has name and title. That's Chris as the town manager. So the owner, Chris is signing on behalf of the town.
Right. I just want to make sure the word owner, but it should say town of Enfield, not owner, I guess. I don't know, I'm
Well, it
sorry.
says owner colon. I mean, I don't know if we're talking across purposes. I'm looking at the document, and at the end of it,
What we have here has nothing with Chris's signature on here.
right. But
So I
that's,
want to make sure that's why the owner should say town of Enfield, I guess.
it will, I mean, once it's filled in.
That's why I'm making the amendment, so right, that's what I'm saying, the amendment, so when it's filled in, it says town of Enfield, and then Chris will sign it. I'm sorry, I just like to be a little
No,
bit
yes,
careful
that's
when it
fine.
comes to, because again, I think talking with folks here, we have some negotiation to do if it gets to that point.
Right, and remember, this is something that is entirely revocable on your part, so this is not a contract.
I filled it in, owner, town of Enfield.
That's right, I want to make sure. So we have any discussion on the amendment? Maria, you're okay?
Yes.
Okay, so on the amendment by a show of hands, all those in favor? Opposed? We have 9 in favor, 0 against. Now the main motion as amended, any questions from anyone? Councilman Bosco.
Yeah, I don't really, I'm not 100% for it, but seeing as we can get out of it, we can start the negotiations and talks.
Yep.
Because was a little bit tough right here, for anyone that's watching. We definitely can back out, and, because I don't like getting pushed in a corner, but we're really sort of time restraint, so it could work out good, but if we don't like it, we can always leave.
Yep. Good point. Anyone else? The motion as amended, roll call, please.
Mayor Ludwig.
4.
Councilor Muller.
4.
Councilor Sferrazza.
4.
Deputy Mayor Suzak.
4.
Councilor Ungary.
4.
Councilor Bosco.
Did you call me?
Yes, I did.
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
Boy, I'm screwed up today. 4.
Councilor Casati.
4.
Councilor Denny.
4.
Councilor Keiner.
4.
Here's 9 in favor, none against, no
We
abstentions.
move on to item 16, public communications. Would anyone like to speak for the public at this time? Come on, George, we threw you a bunch of stuff tonight, George. All right. Welcome, Walter.
Walter Cruzel, 21 Charlie Road, and tonight speaking as a member of the Joint Facility Committee. Thank you for the approval of to get our Phase 2 of our roof done. But I went out in the hallway, because at the time that the Charter Review Committee was formed, I heard that there was supposed to be a plaque made with all their names on it. And I walked to town hall and I couldn't find it. So thank God there wasn't a plaque made, because that would have been a waste of money. Because those people, I should have asked the chief to leave his handcuffs, because that's what they do to us. That's what they did to us. They literally handcuffed us with this limit of theirs that we asked for, that's got to be 20 years old, if not more. And it's, spending money, 20-year-old money is not today money. So kudos to that committee and what they didn't do. But I was going to bring the plaque in and show it to everybody with everybody's name, but I couldn't find the plaque. So thank God there is no plaque, because it would have been a total waste of money. And I'll publicly say it, total waste of time. So, but we will do what we do, as we always do in this town. Proceed and work hard like we do for, let's remind everybody, $0. Why we do this? I don't know. Why you all do this? I don't know. People say they could do it better? Be my guest. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Anyone else like to speak for the council? Declare public communications closed. Councilor communications. Anyone? Councilor Bosco, then Councilor Crisati.
Through the mayor to the town manager, we have a blighted property on Debbie Lane. You think it's possible? I got some complaints that we can maybe just mow at least to the fence to get the high grass down by the street and the town right away at least cleaned up while this is going on. Thank you.
Councilor Crisati.
I know it's been a long evening. Having many conversations with Donna in regard to the Barnard roof, that situation like that. I want to thank Maria for her correspondence. The conversations that I had with Donna in regard to the situation. If we have to do all of these roofs, every elementary school, every school in town, this is going to be a 30-year process. Something really needs to be done. If we have to come up with a referendum to get these roofs done, I think that's something that we have to take a look at. Because there's no way in heck that it should take us 3 phases to do one school in the situation that we're in. So I just wanted to say that this committee does meet. We make these decisions, and it's very, very difficult, to be able to do this roof in 3 phases where we have an opportunity really to get it done in one. But we'll move forward on
I'll
that.
tell you, you're singing to the choir, because for the staff, it's triple the work too, and it's very frustrating. It's not efficient, and it's not, as Donna, it's not the way to run a business, unfortunately, because we're constrained by the rules of government.
Right.
We can't do what's as expedient as we could if we were a business, but we're working towards it. We'll be meeting with council, with John, and with the town attorney to try to come up with a program that will alleviate this going forward.
Yeah, but the only thing I just want to say is I just want to say thank you for the correspondence that we had in regard to this, especially the last minute.
You're welcome.
Last thing, Chris, this might be for September. Just idea thrown out there. Is it possible maybe to have the tax office, Della, just do a little bit of maybe one of the meetings, a demonstration how someone could pay online their taxes? Just a simple, it's funny, I've heard some people say it's complicated, it's not simple. Maybe if we just do a quick demo, as one of our early meetings, to here's how you would pay online, then take that presentation, put it right on your website.
As the director of that department, Mr. Wilcox will be more than happy to talk to her about that.
September-ish, one of the meetings in September? Does that sound fair? Perfect. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilor Sferrazza? Second. Councilor Ungary, all those in favor? Aye. Meeting's adjourned. Good night, everyone. We'll see you in August. Have a great summer, everyone.